Hello everyone, welcome back to Midnight Lullaby. I know many of you are here to drift gently into sleep. Before you close your eyes, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. I'd also love to hear from you in the comments. Let me know where in the world you're listening from. Now, turn off the lights, get comfortable, and let the story carry you into dreams. I lost my sight on a Tuesday. The doctors said it was sudden retinal detachment in both eyes. Rare, irreversible, complete. One moment I was reading the morning paper. The next there was only darkness, thick and absolute, as velvet pressed against my face. 6 months later, I'd learned to navigate my apartment, my neighborhood. The coffee shop on the corner, where the barista always left my change in neat stacks. I could count by touch. I thought I'd adapted. I thought I understood my new world. I was wrong. The hotel wasn't my choice. My sister had booked it for me, insisting I needed a weekend away from the city. "It's quiet," she'd said. "Peaceful. The staff is trained to help guests with accessibility needs." I'd heard the worry in her voice, the fear that I was becoming a hermit in my dark apartment. So I agreed. The taxi driver was silent during the 2-hour drive. I felt us climbing, the air growing cooler, pressed thin by altitude. When we finally stopped, he helped me with my bag, but said nothing about the hotel itself. I paid him, heard his car crunch away on gravel, and stood alone with my white cane extended. The air smelled of pine and something else, something mineral and old, like water that had been still for too long. "Welcome to the Ashwood Hotel." The voice came from directly in front of me. So sudden I flinched. I hadn't heard footsteps, hadn't sensed anyone approaching. "I'm Marcus," I said, extending my hand into empty space. Fingers touched mine, cold, dry, with too many joints. The handshake lasted a moment too long. "We've been expecting you. Please follow me." The voice was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It had a quality I couldn't place, like listening to someone speak through water. I followed, my cane tapping against wooden floorboards that creaked with a rhythm that seemed almost deliberate. The lobby felt vast. My small sounds echoed back from distant walls. The air was stale, unmoving, as though the space had been sealed for years. "Your room is on the 3rd floor. We have an elevator." The elevator arrived with a grinding sound that set my teeth on edge. Inside, the air was even colder. I heard no mechanism, no cables moving, yet we ascended. My stomach lurched as we stopped. "Room 317. 3rd door on your left." I counted my steps, tapping my cane. 1, 2, 3 doors. The key was old-fashioned, large and heavy in my palm. It turned with a resistance that felt organic, like twisting into flesh. Inside, the room smelled of lavender and dust. I explored carefully, mapping the space in my mind. Bed against the far wall, nightstand. A dresser, bathroom to the right. Everything where it should be. I unpacked my few belongings by touch, finding comfort in the familiar textures of my clothes. My toiletries, my talking watch, that announced in its cheerful robot voice. 7:40, 3 p.m. I'd brought a book on tape, but I was tired from the journey. I lay on the bed, feeling the unfamiliar mattress beneath me, and let myself drift. I woke to breathing, not my own, someone else's, slow and measured, coming from the corner of the room. Hello. My voice was small in the darkness. My darkness, always darkness. The breathing continued unchanged. Out, in, out. Wet sounds like lungs filled with liquid. I sat up, reaching for my cane. Is someone there? The breathing stopped. Silence rushed in to fill the space, so complete it felt solid. I waited, my heart hammering, straining to hear any movement. Nothing. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it was the wind, or pipes, or something touched my foot. I jerked back, scrambling up the bed, my shoulders hitting the headboard. The touch had been unmistakable. Fingers, cold and damp, trailing across my bare soul. Who's there? I shouted. I fumbled for my phone, pressed the button for assistance. It rang once, twice, 10 times. No answer. The breathing resumed, but now it was closer, next to the bed. I could feel warmth. No, not warmth, the absence of cold. A pocket of different air, moving around me. My skin prickled. Every nerve screamed that I was being watched. But I was blind. I was always being watched, in a sense, always vulnerable to what I couldn't see. I'd learned to live with that vulnerability. This was different. This was something watching me see. The thought came unbidden, nonsensical. I pushed it away, forced myself to breathe slowly. Panic attack. That's all this was. New place, new sounds. My brain creating patterns in the sensory void. I spoke aloud, trying to ground myself. There's nothing here. I'm alone. I'm safe. Are you? The voice was my own. My exact voice, my inflection. But it came from across the room. Ice flooded my veins. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Someone was imitating me, but the similarity was perfect, down to the slight rasp I developed since childhood asthma. Who are you? I whispered. Who are you? My voice echoed back, but with something underneath it now. Something that made each word feel wrong, like looking at a word until it loses all meaning. I lunged from the bed, grabbed my cane, and swept it in wide arcs. It hit nothing. I moved to the door, fumbling with the lock. My hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the key. Finally, it turned. I pulled the door open and stumbled into the hallway. The air was different out here, warmer, but with an odd thickness to it. I moved down the hall, counting doors. Surely other guests would help. I knocked on 316. Hello? Please, I need help. No answer. I tried the handle lock. I moved to the next door, 315, and knocked again. Again, nothing. I went down the entire hallway, knocking, calling out, hearing my own voice disappear into silence. At the end of the hall, I found the elevator. I pressed the button and waited, my breath coming in short gasps. The elevator arrived with that same grinding sound. I stepped inside, pressed what I hoped was the ground floor button. As we descended, I became aware of a smell. Decay. Not the sharp reek of something recently dead, but the sweet, heavy odor of something that had been rotting for a very long time. The elevator stopped. The doors opened. I stepped out into silence. No sounds of a lobby, no distant voices, no ambient noise of a functioning hotel. Just silence, and that smell, stronger now. "Hello," I called. My voice sounded strange, muffled, as though the air itself was absorbing the sound. I moved forward carefully, my cane tapping. The floor felt different, softer, slightly yielding. Like carpet, but wrong somehow. Organic. Front desk. I tried again. "Welcome back, Marcus." That voice again, the one that had greeted me when I arrived. It came from everywhere and nowhere. "I want to leave," I said. "Please call me a taxi." "But you've only just begun to see." "I can't see," I said, anger cutting through my fear. "I'm blind." Precisely. The word hung in the air like a bell's echo. I felt movement around me. Not air currents, but something else, like reality shifting at the edges. "What do you want from me?" "Want? We want nothing. We are simply curious. It's been so long since we've had a guest who could perceive us." "I don't understand." "You will." Something brushed against my face, soft, like cobwebs or hair. I swatted at it, but my hand passed through nothing. More touches came, from all sides, gentle but insistent, exploring me, learning me, and then, impossible, I saw. Not with my eyes were dead, useless organs, but somehow I perceived. Shapes began to form in the void of my vision, but they were wrong, all wrong. Geometries that hurt to perceive. Angles that folded into themselves, colors I had no names for, because human language had never needed to describe them. The hotel was there, but it was also not there. It existed in layers, like sheets of glass stacked infinitely, each one showing a different version of the same space. In some layers, the hotel was pristine. In others, it was decayed. And in others, still, it was made of something that wasn't matter at all, but something closer to thought, to intention, to hunger. And there were things moving through these layers. Entities. They had noticed my noticing. They turned toward me. I screamed and covered my face, as if that would help. The visions didn't stop. They intensified. I saw the other guests now. The real guests, the ones who had checked in before me. They were still here, had always been here, would always be here. They had become part of the hotel, woven into its impossible structure. Their awareness stretched across dimensions I had no words for. "Make it stop," I begged. "Please, make it stop." "What cannot?" the voice said, and for the first time, I heard something like regret in it. "You opened yourself to us when you accepted your blindness. You learned to sense the world in other ways. You became sensitive to what others cannot perceive. And we have been waiting for someone like you. No one asks, but you came anyway." I sank to my knees, pressing my palms against that soft, wrong floor. My mind was fracturing under the weight of what I was perceiving. Human consciousness wasn't meant to process this many layers of reality at once. "Why?" I gasped. "Why show me this?" "Because you can bear witness. Because in all this time, we have been alone. Existing in the spaces between what is real and what is not. We are the hotel that was never built, the guests who never checked in, the memories of something that never happened. And you can see us. The entities drew closer. I felt their attention like pressure against my skull. They weren't hostile, at least not in any way I understood hostility. They were simply curious, the way a scientist might be curious about a new specimen. They wanted to understand how I perceived them, wanted to know what it felt like to be seen. "Please," I whispered, "let me go. Go." The voice seemed puzzled. "Marcus, you've been gone for 6 months." My blood went cold. "What? You checked out of your apartment 6 months ago. You got in a taxi. You drove here. You've been in room 317 ever since, lying in bed, exploring the layers we showed you. Your sister calls every week. She speaks to you on the phone. You always tell her you're fine, that you're coming home soon." No, that's not. "I just arrived today." "Did you?" Memory shifted, became unreliable. Had I arrived today? Or yesterday? Or... I tried to remember the taxi ride, but the details were slippery, dreamlike. Had there been a taxi? Or had I walked here, drawn by something I couldn't name? Time moves differently here. The voice continued, gentle now. "For us, for you. You've been seeing for so long now. How could you go back to being blind again?" And that was the horror of it. I didn't want to. Despite the wrongness of these visions, despite the pain of perceiving impossible things, I was seeing. After 6 months of absolute darkness, I could perceive shape and form and movement. It didn't matter that what I saw defied logic, defied nature. I was seeing. "You understand now?" the voice said. I did. I understood that I'd been given a choice I didn't know I was making. Understanding that there were worse things than physical blindness. Understanding that I'd traded one darkness for another. But this darkness could look back. I stood slowly, my legs shaking. The visions continued to assault my mind, layers of reality peeling back to reveal even stranger layers beneath. But I was adapting. Human beings are remarkably adaptable. We can get used to almost anything. "What happens now?" I asked. Now you stay. You learn. You become part of the hotel, part of us. And when another guest arrives, someone else who has learned to sense beyond the normal bounds of human perception, you will greet them. You will welcome them. You will help them see. I thought of my sister, imagined her receiving my calls, hearing my voice telling her I was fine, never knowing that her brother had become something else, something that existed in the spaces between. And if I refuse, you won't. The certainty in those words was absolute, because the voice knew what I'd already begun to realize, that I would never choose blindness again, not even to save my humanity. I felt myself changing, felt my consciousness beginning to stretch, to thin, to spread across those infinite layers of the hotel. It didn't hurt. It felt like relief, like finally letting go of a burden I'd been carrying since the moment I lost my sight. Somewhere in a dimension that still followed normal rules, my phone rang. My sister. I could feel her worry, her love. radiating across whatever strange connection we still shared. I wanted to answer, wanted to tell her goodbye, wanted to warn her never to come looking for me. Instead, I heard myself answer in a voice that was mine and not mine. "Hi, Sarah. Yeah, I'm good. The hotel is wonderful. I think I'll stay a bit longer." Her relief was palpable, even across dimensions. "That's great, Marcus. I'm so glad you're doing better." "I'm seeing things more clearly than ever," I said, and it was true. The call ended. I stood in the lobby that was, and wasn't a lobby, surrounded by entities that were and weren't real, seeing things that human eyes were never meant to see. And I smiled. Because somewhere, someone else was losing their sight. Someone else was learning to perceive the world in new ways. Someone else would soon be looking for a quiet hotel, a place to escape, a place to rest. They would find us, and I would be waiting to greet them, to take their hand in mine. Cold and dry, with too many joints, and welcome them home. The Ashwood Hotel always has vacancies. We're always expecting guests. Story 2. I never believed in cursed objects until I inherited my grandmother's house that winter. The December cold had settled into my bones as I sorted through decades of memories, packed in cardboard boxes, each one releasing the scent of mothballs and time itself. The doll sat on the mantelpiece when I arrived. Porcelain face. A glass eyes the color of winter ice, dressed in a Victorian gown of deep crimson velvet. My grandmother had called her Noel. I remembered that name from childhood visits, though I couldn't recall ever seeing the doll before. Strange how memory works. The real estate agent mentioned nothing unusual about the house. Just a sweet old Victorian with good bones and a lot of character. She didn't mention the doll. When I asked her about it during the walkthrough, she looked at the mantelpiece with confusion, as if she'd never noticed it before. "Oh," she said softly. That must have been there all along. I should have paid attention to the way her voice trembled. The first week passed normally. I unpacked boxes, arranged furniture, hung curtains that filtered the pale winter sunlight into something softer, more dreamlike. The doll watched from her perch. I'd moved her to a shelf in the study, uncomfortable with those glassy eyes reflecting the firelight. She was back on the mantelpiece the next morning. I convinced myself I'd forgotten moving her back. The house was new to me, and I was still learning its rhythms, its creaks and whispers. Old houses breathe differently than new ones. They hold conversations with themselves in the quiet hours. December crept forward. I found myself checking the calendar obsessively, watching the days march toward Christmas with a mounting sense of unease I couldn't explain. My sleep grew thin and fragile. I'd wake at odd hours, convinced I'd heard footsteps in the hallway, the soft rustle of fabric, the click of small porcelain feet on hardwood floors. But when I looked, there was only darkness and silence. I started researching the doll. My grandmother's journals mentioned her only once, in an entry dated December 26, 1952. Noel is quiet again. Another year. I wonder if Sarah understands yet. Sarah was my mother. I called her. My phone glowing in the darkness of my bedroom at 2 in the morning. Mom. Did Grandma ever tell you about a doll named Noel? The silence stretched, so long I thought the call had dropped. Where did you hear that name? Her voice was careful, controlled. The voice she used when she was choosing words like one might choose which wire to cut on a bomb. The doll is here, in Grandma's house. I'm living here now, remember. Get rid of it. Sharp, now urgent. Tonight. Before Christmas, please. Mum, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. That doll. It's not what it seems. Your grandmother made me promise never to speak of it. She said the family curse had to stay buried with her. A pause. She made me promise to destroy it after she died, but I couldn't bring myself to go back to that house. What curse? What are you talking about? But she'd already hung up. I stood in the study doorway, staring at Noelle on her shelf. In the lamplight, her face seemed different. More aware. The painted lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile, wasn't quite a grimace. Something in between. Something that suggested knowledge of terrible secrets. I reached for her. The porcelain was warm. That night, I dreamed. In the dream, I was watching myself sleep from the corner of the room, except it wasn't quite me in the bed. The figure was too still, too perfect. Like a doll arranged to look like a sleeping person, and I was the one standing in the corner, watching, my body stiff and cold, my eyes unblinking. When I woke, my joints ached. My skin felt tight and strange, as if it didn't quite fit anymore. December 20th. 5 days until Christmas. I found the letters in the attic. Dozens of them, spanning generations. Women in my family, writing to each other about Noel, about the Christmas curse, about the tradition they'd kept secret for over a century. The doll, they wrote, was created by my great-great-grandmother, a woman skilled in arts that polite society didn't acknowledge. She'd been dying, and she couldn't bear to leave her young daughter alone. So she'd found a way to stay. A vessel. A beautiful porcelain shell that could house her consciousness, her essence, her desperate love. But something went wrong in the transfer. She'd miscalculated, or perhaps the universe itself had objected to such an unnatural exchange. Her consciousness split. Part of her went into the doll. Part of her stayed in her dying body. And in that moment of division, something else slipped through the crack between worlds. Something hungry. Every year, on Christmas Eve, the doll awakens fully. For one night, whatever inhabits it becomes strong enough to move, to act, to seek. It searches for someone to trade places with. A new vessel. A living body for a consciousness that should have died long ago. The women in my family had learned to manage it. They kept the doll, passed it down, and each Christmas Eve, they performed a small ritual. They'd sit with Noel, talk to her, acknowledge her, and most importantly, they'd offer her something. A lock of hair, a drop of blood, a secret whispered in the darkness, just enough to satisfy the hunger for one more year. My grandmother had done this faithfully until the year she died. She died on December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. She'd left the doll unattended on the night that mattered most. I was reading these letters by candlelight when I heard it. The soft tap of footsteps descending from the mantelpiece. The whisper of velvet on wood. The small, deliberate sounds of something moving with purpose. December 24th, Christmas Eve. I couldn't see her in the darkness, but I could feel her presence. The air grew colder. My breath came out in clouds of white vapor. Somewhere in the house, Noel was walking, searching. The letters had been clear about what happened if the ritual wasn't performed. If the doll wasn't acknowledged, wasn't fed, wasn't satisfied. She would find someone. She would touch them. And in that touch, the exchange would begin. I found candles, salt, the other items mentioned in the letters. My hands shook as I drew the circle, lit the flames, prepared the offerings. But where was she? I needed her in the center of the circle. I needed to contain her, to complete the ritual before midnight. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 11 times. Noel. I called into the darkness. My voice sounded strange, small and fragile against the vast silence of the house. Noel, I know what you need. I know what you are. Please, let me help you. I heard her then, a soft laugh like breaking glass. It came from everywhere and nowhere. The walls seemed to breathe with it. You think you can help me? The voice was wrong. Multiple voices layered over each other. Women's voices from different eras, different ages. My grandmother's voice somewhere in the mix. You don't understand. This isn't about help. This is about survival. This is about choice. She stepped into the candlelight. The doll, but larger now, more substantial. Not quite human-sized, but growing. Her porcelain face cracked in places, and through the cracks, I could see something moving underneath, something dark and writhing. Every year I get stronger, she said. Every year the boundary gets thinner. Your grandmother knew. They all knew. But they were too afraid to end it. Too sentimental to destroy me. So they fed me, kept me alive, passed the burden down the line. I stood frozen in my circle of salt and candles. Why? I managed to ask. Because I'm family. Her laugh again, terrible and sad. Because some part of me is still your great-great-grandmother, still loves her descendants, still wants to protect and preserve. And some part of me is something else entirely. Something that found an open door and walked through. We're tangled together now, the love and the hunger. Can't separate them anymore. The clock chimed the quarter hour, 11:15. You have a choice tonight, Noel said, moving closer to the circle's edge. Her feet left small, dark marks on the floor. You can feed me like they did. Give me enough to sleep for another year. Or... She paused and her smile widened impossibly. Or you can let me in. Let me show you what I've learned in all these years of watching, waiting, existing between states. Let me share this burden. What do you mean? The exchange doesn't have to be one way. You could join me in here. She gestured to her porcelain body. There's room, I think, for one more. We could share this beautiful, terrible existence. You'd never age, never die. You'd just wait year after year for Christmas Eve. For that one night of freedom. I stared at her, horror and fascination warring in my chest. What happens if I do neither? What if I just leave? Walk out that door right now? Her expression shifted. For a moment, I saw something like pity in those glass eyes. I follow. Not tonight, maybe, but eventually. This is a family curse, remember. Blood calls to blood. You're connected to me now. You've read the letters. You've spoken my name. You've acknowledged what I am. There's no running from that. The clock struck 11:30. My mind raced. The ritual materials were ready. I could feed her. Satisfy her for another year. Pass the burden to the next generation, just like my grandmother and her grandmother before her. Or I could refuse. See what happened. Test the limits of this curse. Or, and this thought came unbidden, strange and compelling, I could accept her offer. Step into that impossible existence. Become part of the doll, part of the curse, part of the endless waiting and waking. Why would anyone choose that? I asked. Because I'm so very lonely. Her voice softened, became almost human. And because some part of you is curious, I can see it in your eyes. You wonder what it's like to exist outside of time, to be preserved, perfect, unchanging, to wake once a year and remember what it was to be alive. She was right. Some dark part of me did wonder. The candles flickered. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and silent. Christmas Eve settling over the world like a blanket. Decide. Noel whispered. Midnight approaches. I looked at the ritual materials, at the doll growing more substantial with each passing moment, at the letters scattered around me, generations of women describing their fear, their duty, their secret shame. I thought about my mother's voice on the phone, the urgency, the unspoken understanding that some burdens are passed down whether we want them or not. The clock struck 11:45. I made my choice. But I won't tell you which one I chose. Because right now, as you listen to this story, as you lie in your own darkness, in your own December night, perhaps you're wondering about the doll on your mantelpiece. The one you've always had. The one you inherited from your grandmother. The one whose name you've never quite learned. And perhaps you're wondering why you suddenly feel so cold. Why your joints ache slightly. Why your skin feels just a little bit too tight. The clock in your house. You do have a clock, don't you? Might be chiming midnight soon. Or it might have chimed already. Time gets strange on Christmas Eve. It folds and bends. It makes room for impossible things. So listen carefully. In the silence after this story ends, you might hear something. The soft tap of porcelain feet. The rustle of velvet. The sound of something small and patient making its way through your house. Finding you, choosing you, asking you, in a voice like breaking glass, like your grandmother's whisper, like the intersection of love and hunger. What will you feed me tonight? Merry Christmas. Sleep well. Story 3. I inherited the dollhouse on a Tuesday afternoon in October. When the light comes thin and watery through the windows and everything feels slightly unreal. My aunt's estate lawyer handed me the key to her storage unit with an expression I couldn't quite read. Somewhere between pity and warning. She wanted you to have this specifically, he said, adjusting his glasses. She left a note. Said you'd understand. But I didn't understand. Aunt Helen and I hadn't spoken in 15 years. Not since that strange summer when I was 12 and stayed at her house. The summer I refused to talk about afterward. The summer of nightmares. The dollhouse sat in the back corner of the storage unit, covered with a white sheet that had yellowed with age. Even draped, I recognized its shape. The Victorian architecture. The widow's walk on the roof, the wraparound porch. My hands trembled as I pulled the sheet away. It was exactly as I remembered. 3 stories tall, intricately detailed, with real glass windows no larger than my thumb. The paint had faded somewhat, the deep blue now closer to gray, but otherwise it seemed untouched by time. Preserved, waiting. I should have left it there. Should have told the lawyer to dispose of it, donate it, burn it. Instead, I loaded it carefully into my car, cushioning it with blankets, driving home with unusual caution, as if transporting something fragile and alive. My apartment felt smaller with the dollhouse in it. I placed it on the table by the window in my living room, where afternoon light could reach it. For 3 days, I didn't touch it beyond dusting the exterior. I circled it, examined it from different angles, tried to remember why it frightened me so much as a child. The memories came back slowly, like developing photographs. Aunt Helen showing me the dollhouse that first night, her hands gentle as she opened the hinged front to reveal the rooms inside. The miniature furniture, perfectly scaled. The tiny books with actual printed pages. The family of porcelain dolls, their painted faces serene. They've been with me a long time, she'd said. Sometimes I think they're more real than we are. I'd laugh, but she hadn't smiled. On the 4th night, I opened the dollhouse. The hinges creaked. A sound like a sigh, or perhaps a breath held too long and finally released. The interior smelled of old wood and something else, something organic and faintly sweet. Decay, maybe, or flowers long dried. The family was still there. Father Doll in the study, seated at a desk no bigger than a matchbox. Mother Doll in the kitchen, hands raised as if kneading invisible dough. 2 children dolls in the nursery upstairs, one in a rocking chair, one standing by the window. And in the attic. I'd forgotten about the attic doll. A 5th figure, barely visible in the shadows, facing the corner. Their faces were more detailed than I remembered. The father's expression held a hint of worry, lines painted around his eyes. The mother's smile seemed strained. The children looked almost fearful, their glass eyes too wide, too bright. I told myself it was just skilled craftsmanship, nothing more. Just paint and porcelain and imagination. That night. I dreamed I was small enough to walk through the dollhouse door. The dreams came every night after that, always the same at first. Entering the house, moving through rooms that felt both familiar and wrong. The wallpaper patterns shifted when I wasn't looking directly at them. The tiny photographs on the walls showed faces I almost recognized. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked backward. During the day, I'd examine the dollhouse in bright sunlight, trying to prove to myself that nothing had changed. But small things were different. A chair moved from one side of a room to another. A door that had been closed now stood open. The father doll no longer sat at his desk, but stood near the parlor window, as if watching something outside. I mentioned it to my friend Sarah when she came over for coffee. "You're stressed," she said, reasonable and calm. "You're probably moving things without realizing it. Muscle memory or something." But I knew I hadn't touched the dolls. Knew it with the same certainty I'd known at 12 years old. That something was deeply wrong with Aunt Helen's house. "Did your aunt seem okay before she died?" Sarah asked carefully. "I don't know. I hadn't seen her in years." The coffee tasted bitter on my tongue. "She died in her sleep," the lawyer said. "Peaceful." But her note hadn't felt peaceful. 3 words in shaky handwriting. They need witness. I found myself staying up later, watching the dollhouse as darkness filled my apartment. Watching and waiting, though I couldn't say for what. Moonlight made the windows gleam like watchful eyes. Shadows pooled in the corners of the miniature rooms. At 3:17 a.m. on a Thursday, I saw the first movement. It was small, so small I might have imagined it. The mother doll's hand, dropping from its raised position to rest at her side. I blinked, leaned closer. Her head had turned slightly, no longer facing the kitchen counter, but angled toward the doorway. My heart performed acrobatics in my chest. I wanted to look away, close the dollhouse, leave the room. Instead, I pulled my chair closer and kept watching. Minutes passed in held, breath silence. Then the father doll moved, a rotation so smooth it might have been mechanical. He faced the parlor door now, his painted features somehow conveying urgency. The children moved next, both at once, turning toward their nursery door. And in the attic, in the shadows I could barely see into, the 5th doll stepped away from the corner. I understood then, with dream, logic certainty, that they were afraid. These porcelain figures, these impossible moving dolls, were terrified. But of what? The answer came as I watched the attic more carefully. There was a 6th doll, one I hadn't noticed before. Though I'd examined every inch of the house, it emerged from the darkest corner of the attic, and even at this scale, even rendered in miniature, I could sense something wrong with it. Its proportions were slightly off, its posture unnatural. It moved with jerking, insect-like motions. The family dolls retreated as it descended the attic stairs. I wanted to scream, to warn them, but my voice caught in my throat. This was absurd. These were toys. Dolls couldn't move, couldn't feel fear. Couldn't. The sixth doll reached the second floor. It paused at the children's room, and I watched in horror as the two child dolls pressed themselves against the far wall. One raised its tiny arm, perhaps pleading, perhaps defending. The gesture was heartbreakingly human. Then I remembered. That summer, 15 years ago, the nightmares I'd had. Not random dreams, but scenes, specific and recurring. A family trapped in their house while something hunted them, room by room, night by night. I'd wake up crying and refuse to tell Aunt Helen why. "You're seeing it too now," she'd said one night, sitting on the edge of my bed. "I'm sorry. I didn't think it would pass to you." Seeing what? What happened here? What happened to them? She gestured toward the dollhouse, barely visible in the darkness of the guest room where she'd placed it. The family that lived in the real house, before it burned. I'd gone home the next day, insisted my parents come get me early. Buried the memories until they became fog. But now, watching the scene replay in miniature, the fog lifted. This wasn't just a dollhouse. It was a record. A memory preserved in wood and porcelain and paint. And every night, the dolls reenacted what had happened to them in life. The thing that had gotten into their house. The thing that had hunted them. The sixth doll moved to the master bedroom. The parents had barricaded the door with furniture, but it didn't matter. The wrong, shaped doll simply appeared inside, as if doors meant nothing to it. The mother and father dolls pressed together in the corner, their painted faces turned toward the threat. I could have closed the dollhouse, could have covered it, boxed it, thrown it away. But Aunt Helen's note echoed in my mind. They need witness. What good was a witness? What could witnessing change about something that had already happened? That played out night after night in miniature theater. Unless witnessing was the only thing left that mattered, the only thing that made their suffering mean something beyond endless, unobserved repetition. I watched as the scene played out. The wrong, shaped doll moving through the house, the family fleeing from room to room, until finally they all ended up in the attic, the place they'd started, the place they'd die again. But this time, as the sixth doll climbed toward them, something different happened. The father doll turned, not toward the approaching horror, but toward the front of the house, toward me. His painted eyes seemed to find mine across the impossible distance between us, and though porcelain cannot change expression, cannot truly see, I felt recognized, acknowledged. The scene froze, all six dolls motionless, as if waiting. I reached out with trembling fingers and carefully, gently, removed the sixth doll from the attic. It felt wrong in my hand, too heavy, too warm. The porcelain seemed to pulse like something living. I walked to my kitchen, opened the door to the patio, and placed the doll on the concrete. Then I found a hammer. The doll shattered with the first blow, breaking into more pieces than should have been possible, each fragment turning to dust before my eyes. The dust scattered in the night breeze and disappeared, leaving no trace behind. When I returned to the dollhouse, The family of 5 stood together in the parlor, arranged, somehow, in a way that suggested relief, gratitude, peace. I closed the front of the dollhouse gently and covered it with a clean cloth. That night, I dreamed again of being small enough to enter the dollhouse. But this time, the family was waiting in the foyer to greet me. The father doll stepped forward and, in a voice like wind through distant trees, said thank you. "What were you?" I asked. "What were you in life?" "Why, we're a family," the mother doll replied. "We lived in a house. Something came in that shouldn't have. Something that wouldn't leave. And now, no, we can rest. Now we can stop, replaying the worst night of our existence." The children dolls moved closer, their painted faces serene. "You've witnessed. You've acted. The story can end. I woke with tears on my face and salt on my lips." The dollhouse sits on my table still, but I haven't opened it since that night. Sometimes I catch movement in my peripheral vision. A flicker behind the tiny windows, a shadow crossing a miniature room. But it feels different now. Not menacing, but companionable, like sharing space with friendly ghosts. Aunt Helen's note made sense finally. They'd needed a witness, yes, but more than that, they'd needed someone willing to see, to acknowledge, and finally to act, to free them from their eternal reenactment. Last week, I received a letter from the estate lawyer. More of Aunt Helen's effects had been found, including a journal. In it, she'd written about the dollhouse, about the real house it was modeled after. It had stood 3 towns over, back in 1847. A family named Ashford had lived there. Father, mother, 2 children. One night in October, their house had caught fire. All 4 died. But here was the strange part. When investigators searched the ruins, they found evidence of a 5th person. Burnt bones in the attic, too damaged to identify. Someone who shouldn't have been there. Someone the Ashfords had never reported or mentioned to anyone. The authorities concluded a drifter had broken in, perhaps started the fire accidentally. But Aunt Helen had written in her journal. They knew. The family knew someone was in their house. They could feel it watching, waiting. But by the time they understood what it was too late. She'd found the dollhouse at an estate sale in 1952. The previous owner, an elderly woman, had gripped Aunt Helen's hand and said, "Don't let them disappear. Don't let it happen where no one sees." For 50 years, Aunt Helen had kept her vigil, watching the nightly reenactments, bearing witness to the Ashfords' terror and tragedy. And when she grew too old, too tired, she'd passed the responsibility to me. I've started researching other dollhouses, other miniature worlds kept in attics and basements and forgotten storage units, wondering how many hold similar stories. How many tiny voices call out in the night, hoping someone will see, will witness, will remember. Sometimes, very late, I open the dollhouse and whisper to the family inside, "I see you. I remember you. You were real." And in the morning, I always find them arranged peacefully, the children in their beds, the parents in their room, sleeping like nothing bad has ever happened, or ever could. It's the kindest lie I can tell them. Tonight, as I prepare for sleep, the dollhouse stands silent in the moonlight. But I swear, as my eyes close, I hear the faintest sound, like children laughing, like a family at peace, like a story finally allowed to end. Or perhaps finally allowed to begin again. Outside my window, October rain begins to fall, washing the world clean. Inside the dollhouse, behind glass windows no larger than my thumb, a tiny light flickers in the parlor. Someone is home. Someone is safe. And that, I think, is all any of us can hope for. To be seen, to be remembered, and finally, to rest. Story 4. I found the game console at a yard sale on a Saturday morning in late September. It was sitting on a folding table between a stack of DVDs and a box of kitchen utensils, looking both out of place and entirely forgotten. It wasn't any system I recognized. Not a Nintendo, not a PlayStation, not any brand I'd ever seen. The casing was made of dark gray plastic, scuffed and worn, with a single cartridge slot on top and 2 controller ports on the front. There were no logos, no brand names, just a small label on the bottom that read MEM20, Model M, 1987. The woman running the sale was elderly, her hands trembling slightly as she took my $5. "Does it work?" I asked. "I don't know," she said, not meeting my eyes. That was my grandson's. He left it here years ago and never came back for it. Something in her voice made me want to ask more, but she'd already turned away. Was helping another customer with an aggressive kind of focus that discouraged further conversation. I took the console home, along with the single cartridge that had been taped to its side. The cartridge was unmarked except for a handwritten label. Level 10. My apartment is small. A studio in Seattle's University district where I'd lived since dropping out of college 2 years ago. I work nights at a grocery store, stock shelves, avoid eye contact. It's not much of a life, but it's mine, and I've gotten used to the emptiness of it. I hooked the console up to my old TV, surprised when it powered on immediately. No intro screen, no logo animation, just a black screen with white text. Lalam TEVL1 PS Stay Art. The controller was simple. A directional pad, 4 buttons, start and select. I pressed start. The game that loaded was basic, almost primitive. I controlled a small figure navigating through a maze. The graphics were minimal. Simple lines, flat colors, no detail. But there was something hypnotic about it, something that demanded focus. As I played, I realized the maze was familiar. The layout matched my apartment building. Hallways, doors, stairs. My avatar moved through a pixelated version of the space I just walked through hours ago. The objective appeared at the bottom of the screen. Find DTHEKUI. Rama MBRT DOOR. I maneuvered my avatar through the digital hallways until I found a small key icon. The screen flashed white, and new text appeared. LEVL1 CMPE IMA OSTORD EVVL 2UNLO FICA D. The screen went black. I sat there, controller in hand, waiting for the next level to load. But instead, I felt it. A gap. A blank space in my mind. Something that should have been there, but wasn't. I tried to hold on to the feeling, to identify what was missing. But that's the nature of absence. You can't pinpoint what you've never known you lost. I shook it off, blamed it on tiredness, on the late hour. I pressed start again. Level 2 was different. The environment had changed. Now I was navigating what looked like a school. Lockers lined pixelated hallways. The avatar moved through classrooms, a cafeteria, a gymnasium. Fen Dieshibok. Ram M BRT lesson. I played for 20 minutes before finding the book icon hidden in a digital locker. The same white flash. The same text LEVL2 Xiam by MORA Stioad LEVL3 UMAOSK80 and again that feeling. That absence. But stronger this time. More noticeable. I put the controller down and stood up, suddenly anxious. I walked to my kitchen, opened the refrigerator, stared at its contents without seeing them. Something was wrong. Something was missing. But what? I pulled out my phone, scrolled through contacts. Names I recognized but couldn't quite place. Had I called these people recently? Were they friends? Acquaintances? The uncertainty was disorienting. I called the number labeled Mom. Hello. Her voice was familiar and strange at once.
Hi,
I said.
It's me. Marcus!
Honey, is everything okay? You usually don't call this late. I wanted to hear your voice. Are you sure you're okay? You sound strange. I'm fine. Mom, what was my favorite subject in school? Silence on the other end. Marcus, are you drunk? No, I just can't remember. Isn't that weird? You're scaring me. Do you need me to come over? No. I'm fine. Sorry. I'm just tired. I'll call you tomorrow. I hung up before she could respond, stared at the phone in my hand. Why had I called her? What had I been trying to remember? The console sat on the floor, its power light glowing softly. I should have turned it off, unplugged it, thrown it away. Instead, I picked up the controller. Level 3 began immediately. The environment was a house. Rooms rendered in those same simple graphics, furniture reduced to basic shapes. A living room, a kitchen, bedrooms. Fayan THEPHO Gyare pitch. Ramember THFE. I played mechanically, moving through the digital house. The layout was familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. It was a house I'd been in before. A house that meant something. I found the photograph icon in a digital bedroom. The white flash came, more intense this time, almost painful. ILVL3, OMP to MMOI STOR LEVL4U and LO Fikida. I dropped the controller. There was a face I couldn't remember. Someone important. Someone whose absence left a hole bigger than the previous ones. I tried to picture them, but there was nothing there. No features. No name. Just a certainty that someone should exist in my mind, but didn't. I looked at my phone again, at the photo app. Scrolled through pictures. There were gaps in the sequence. Dates with no photos. As if images had been deleted, but the timestamps remained. Or as if the memories of taking those photos had been removed, making the images meaningless. I stood and backed away from the console. This was insane. Games didn't erase memories. It was impossible, illogical, a violation of every physical law. but the gaps in my mind were real. The feeling of loss was undeniable. I should have left then. Should have walked out of my apartment and never come back. But I was curious. That uniquely human curse. I wanted to understand what was happening. Wanted to see how far this went. I picked up the controller again. Level 4 through 7 blurred together. Each one took a different memory. Small things at first. The name of a childhood pet. The taste of my grandmother's cooking. The feeling of my father's hand on my shoulder. Each loss was noticeable, but not devastating. I could function without these memories. I could still be me, but by level 8, the losses were becoming significant. The level loaded with a new environment. A hospital. White walls, long corridors, rooms with beds. Find ETHEIA genosis. Ramambar THEFAR. I played slowly, knowing now what would happen, but unable to stop. The game had its hooks in me. Not through addiction, but through the terrible momentum of losing things you can't name until they're gone. I found the diagnosis icon in a digital hospital room. LEVLAKOMPEV Memorasto ALEVL9UNOOKADE. He's this time. The loss was physical. I doubled over, gasping, as something essential was ripped away. When I could finally breathe again, I sat back and realized I couldn't remember why I'd dropped out of college. The reason, whatever it had been, whatever crisis or trauma or decision had derailed my life, was simply gone. In its place was just a vague sense that I'd needed to leave, that something had happened, but the details were inaccessible. I looked around my apartment with new eyes. Why was I here? Why was I living like this? Alone, isolated. Working a job I didn't care about. There had been a reason that had made sense at the time. But now I couldn't remember it. My phone rang. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. And again. Finally, I answered. Marcus, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for an hour. Are you okay? I'm fine. You don't sound fine. You called me earlier asking strange questions. Now you're not answering. I'm coming over. No, don't. I'm already in the car. I'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up before I could argue. 20 minutes. I looked at the console, still running, waiting for me to start level 9. I knew I should stop. The losses were becoming too great. Whatever the game was taking from me was fundamental, structural. I was becoming someone different, someone with holes. But I also knew I wouldn't stop, couldn't stop. Because the worst part of losing memories isn't the absence. It's the awareness of absence. And the only way to make that awareness go away was to lose enough that you forgot you'd ever had anything to lose. I pressed start. Level 9 was different from the others. The environment kept changing, morphing from one location to another, cycling through places I recognized but couldn't quite place. A playground, a bedroom, a classroom, a car, a cemetery. Find Yawar elf. Ramamembiyarbiyari. The objective chilled me. This wasn't about a specific memory. This was about identity itself. I played carefully, searching every corner of the shifting environment. The avatar moved through spaces that seemed to overlap. to exist in multiple times simultaneously. Child and teenager and adult, all the same person but different. I found the icon, a small figure, the same one I'd been controlling, but standing still, waiting. When my avatar touched it, the white flash was blinding. LEVL9 Campielav Mamoarwastiord Laviel 10 UNO Sikada. The pain was excruciating. Not physical pain, but something worse. The pain of feeling yourself disappear. Core memories, defining moments, the experiences that had made me who I was. All of them suddenly gone. When it passed, I sat on my floor, shaking, trying to remember my own name. Marcus. That was it. Marcus. What? My last name was gone. My age was uncertain. My history was a collection of fragments that didn't connect to anything. I looked at the framed photos on my bookshelf. Myself with people I didn't recognize, smiling with strangers. Who were they? Why had I kept these pictures? The doorbell rang. I stood shakily, opened the door. A woman stood there, middle-aged, eyes red from crying. She looked at me with such relief and worry that I felt I should know her. Should understand why she was here. Marcus, she said, reaching for me. Thank God, I said, because it seemed like the right thing to say. Do I know you? Her face crumpled. Marcus, it's me. It's Mom. A mom. The word meant something in an abstract way, but when I looked at her face, I felt nothing. No recognition, no connection. Just the uncomfortable awareness that I should feel something but didn't. I think something's wrong with me, I said. She came inside, saw the console, the controller on the floor. Her expression changed. Fear became something harder, angrier. Where did you get that? She demanded. A yard sale. Why? That thing belonged to your brother. She couldn't finish the sentence. Sat down heavily on my couch, her hands covering her face. I have a brother. She looked up at me, and the devastation in her eyes was terrible. You had a brother, Daniel. He's why you dropped out of school. He's why you moved here, away from home. You were trying to escape the grief, the guilt. He died 2 years ago. He was playing that game for weeks. We tried to get him to stop, but he was obsessed. Said he was almost done, almost at level 10. And then one day we found him in his room, alive but empty. He couldn't remember anything. Couldn't remember us, couldn't remember his own life. We put him in a care facility. He's still there, just existing. I looked at the console, still running, showing the title screen for level 10. You blamed yourself. Mom continued. You couldn't save him. You couldn't understand what had happened. It destroyed you. You dropped out, moved here, cut yourself off from everyone who reminded you of him. But I don't remember any of that. I know. She stood, walked to the console. This thing, it's a curse. Someone made it. For what purpose, I don't know. But it takes memories and stores them. That's what the levels are. Progressively deeper cuts into your identity, your history, yourself. Your brother made it to level 10. We don't know what happened to him after that, because by then he couldn't communicate what he'd lost. She reached for the power switch. "Wait," I said. She looked at me, confused. "Marcus, we need to destroy this thing." "But the memories. It says they're stored." "Maybe. Maybe if someone beats level 10, they get them back. Maybe I can get my brother back." "Marcus, no. You've already lost too much. I can see it in your eyes. You don't even know who I am. If you keep playing, then I'll lose everything. But if I don't try, Daniel stays empty forever. He's gone, Marcus. Even if you somehow retrieved his memories, they'd just be data. He wouldn't. I have to try." I picked up the controller before she could stop me. Pressed start before I could think better of it. Level 10 loaded immediately. The environment was simple. Just a small room with a door. My avatar stood in the center. No maze, no objectives, no icons to find. Just text, T-O column pilil EAVL 10, YU USTRSWRIOU. I stared at the screen. The question should have been simple. But I didn't know anymore. Who was I? What defined me beyond this moment, this apartment? This strange woman who claimed to be my mother. A keyboard prompt appeared on screen. I had to type the answer. I sat with the controller, cursor blinking, waiting for my response. My mother was crying now, begging me to stop, but her voice seemed distant, unimportant. Who was I? I began to type, but the words felt wrong as soon as they appeared. I deleted them, tried again. Each attempt felt more hollow than the last. Every identity I claimed felt like a lie. And then I understood. The game wasn't asking who I was. It was showing me that I wasn't anyone anymore. That identity is nothing but a collection of memories, and without them, there's no self to speak of. Just an empty vessel, a body going through motions. The cursor blinked. Waiting, patient. I set down the controller and looked at my mother. Her face was familiar now in a strange way. Not because I remembered her, but because I was seeing her clearly for the first time. Seeing her fear, her love, her desperation to save a son who was already lost. "I don't know how to answer," I told her. "Then don't. Please, Marcus. Turn it off. Walk away." "But Daniel is gone. But you're still here. Some part of you is still here. Please don't leave me too." I looked at the screen, at the unanswered question, at the promise of level 10's completion. What would I find on the other side? My memories? Daniel's. Both. Or would I find nothing at all? Just more absence, more holes. Until there was nothing left but the question itself, eternally unanswered. My hand moved toward the controller, then stopped, then moved back. I've been sitting here for hours now. My mother eventually left, not because she wanted to, but because she had to. Because there's a limit to how long someone can watch. You destroy yourself before they have to save themselves instead. The console is still running. The question is still on screen. The cursor is still blinking. And I still don't know what to do. Because here's the terrible truth I've discovered, even without memories, even without identity, even without understanding who I am, or was or could have been, I'm still curious, still compelled, still drawn to the completion of things, to the solving of puzzles, to the answering of questions. Maybe that's all I am now. The drive to continue to finish, to see what comes next. Maybe that's all any of us are. The cursor blinks. Who are you? I don't know. But I'm about to find out. Story 5. I found her at an estate sale on a Sunday afternoon in October. The house belonged to a woman named Margaret Chen, who had died alone at 83, her body undiscovered for 2 weeks. The neighbors mentioned this with hushed voices, as if death itself might be contagious. The doll sat on a shelf in what must have been a child's bedroom, though the child had clearly grown up decades ago. She was porcelain, about 18 inches tall, with delicate features and glass eyes the color of rain. Her dress was Victorian, deep burgundy velvet with cream lace at the collar and cuffs. Someone had taken great care of her. Not a chip, not a crack, not a single strand of her dark hair out of place. I'm a collector, though I hate that word. It makes me sound obsessive, like I'm trying to fill some void. I prefer to think of myself as a curator. I appreciate craftsmanship, history, the stories objects carry with them. This doll was exceptional. Late 1800s, possibly French, worth several $1,000s if authentic. The price tag said $30. I asked the estate sale coordinator, a bored-looking woman with a clipboard, about the doll's history. No idea, she said, barely glancing up. Family just wants everything gone. You want it or not. I bought her. That night, I placed her on my bedroom dresser, angled so I could see her from my bed. I live alone in a brownstone in Brooklyn. 3 floors of beautiful solitude. I've always preferred my own company. People are complicated, exhausting. Objects are simple. They have weight and presence, but no demands, no expectations. I photographed the doll from several angles, planning to research her origins online. Through the camera lens, her glass eyes seemed to follow the movement. A trick of the light. I told myself, though something in my chest tightened. That night, I dreamed of a girl. She was perhaps 7 or 8, dressed in clothing from another century. She stood in a garden, picking flowers. Lilacs, heavy with scent. She turned to me and smiled, and her face was the doll's face, the same delicate features, the same rain-colored eyes. She's mine, the girl said. I named her Emma. I woke with the word on my lips, Emma. The morning was cold for October, unseasonably so. I made coffee, tried to shake off the dream's lingering unease. I'd had strange dreams before. Came with living alone, with spending so much time surrounded by antiques and their accumulated histories. But when I returned to my bedroom, the doll had moved. I'd left her facing the bed. Now she faced the window, her back to me. I stood in the doorway, coffee growing cold in my hands, trying to remember if I'd moved her myself. Sometimes I did things on autopilot, especially before my morning coffee. I crossed the room and turned her back to her original position. Her dress rustled under my fingers. Real silk, real velvet. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. I found myself running my thumb across her porcelain cheek, feeling the cool smoothness. Her eyes blinked, I dropped her. She landed on the hardwood floor with a sound that made me flinch. But when I picked her up, she was undamaged. Of course she was. Porcelain that old would have shattered. Instead, she was perfect. Impossibly perfect. I examined her more carefully now, looking for the mechanism that controlled the eyes. Many antique dolls had weighted eyes that closed when laid down. But I couldn't find any mechanism. The eyes were fixed, solid glass. Stress, I said aloud. I'm tired, that's all. But my hands shook as I set her back on the dresser. I spent the day at my shop in Manhattan, where I sold antiques and collectibles to people with more money than sense. It was a good distraction. I sold a Victorian writing desk and a set of Art Deco lamps. I didn't think about the doll at all.
That's a lie.
I thought about her constantly. I came home after dark. The brownstone was cold. The heating system had been acting up again. I'd need to call someone. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, flicked on the light. The doll was on my bed, not on the dresser where I'd left her. On my bed, positioned carefully against the pillows, like someone had tucked her in. My heart hammered against my ribs. I lived alone. The doors were locked. No one had been here. I picked her up, and this time I felt it. A tremor, the slightest vibration, like holding a phone set to silent. The sensation traveled up my arms, raising goosebumps. "What are you?" I whispered. Her expression didn't change, but I swear something shifted in those glass eyes. A deepening, like clouds gathering. I should have thrown her away. Donated her. Burned her. Instead, I put her back on the dresser and told myself I was being irrational. Objects don't move. Objects don't vibrate. The human brain creates patterns, finds faces in static, invents explanations for the inexplicable. I took a sleeping pill that night. Dreamless sleep, I hoped. But she was waiting for me in my dreams anyway. The girl in the garden again, but older this time. 10, maybe 11. She sat on a stone bench, holding the doll, holding Emma in her lap. She was crying, quiet tears that left no sound. "Why are you crying?" I asked. "They're going to separate us?" she said. "Mama says I'm too old for dolls. She's going to give Emma away." "I'm sorry," I said, though I didn't know why I was apologizing. The girl looked up at me, and her eyes were exactly like the doll's. Or was it the other way around? "You don't understand," she said. "Emma is all I have. She's the only one who listens. The only one who knows." Knows what? But the girl was fading, the garden dissolving into darkness. I tried to hold on to the dream, to hear the answer, but I was waking, pulled back into my cold bedroom, my empty house. It was 3:17 a.m. I know because I checked my phone immediately, that automatic gesture we all make now. And then I saw her. The doll was standing on my dresser, not sitting, standing. Balanced on her small porcelain feet, impossible, defying physics and reason. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I watched as she slowly, deliberately, turned her head to face me. Her mouth opened. "Sarah." The voice was a child's voice, thin and high and filled with longing. It came from everywhere and nowhere, resonating in my skull. My name isn't Sarah, I managed to say. Sarah. Sarah, where have you been? I've waited so long. The doll's arms lifted, reaching toward me. Her joints moved smoothly, organically. Nothing mechanical about the motion at all. I scrambled out of bed, backing toward the door. Stay away from me. Don't you remember? Don't you remember what you promised? I've never seen you before. I bought you yesterday. The doll tilted her head, the gesture eerily human. Yesterday. Has it only been yesterday? It feels like forever. It feels like dying, over and over, waiting for you to come back. I ran. I actually ran from my own bedroom. Down the stairs to the kitchen, my heart threatening to burst from my chest. I grabbed my keys, my phone. I would leave. I would go to a hotel. I would never come back. But something stopped me at the door. Not fear, or not only fear, curiosity. The question that had been forming since I first touched her. What happened to you? I went back upstairs slowly, each step requiring conscious effort. The doll was sitting on the dresser now, positioned as innocently as when I'd first placed her there. But I knew better now. I sat on the edge of my bed, keeping distance between us. Tell me, I said. Tell me what happened. The room was silent for a long moment. Then her mouth moved again, and the words came. Her name was Sarah Chen. I belonged to her. She loved me more than anything in the world. More than her parents, who were always busy with their restaurant. More than her sister, who teased her for playing with dolls. I was her confidant, her companion, her only friend. The voice changed as she spoke, becoming clearer, more substantial. Sarah told me everything. About the boys at school who pulled her hair. About her teacher who made her feel stupid. About her father's temper, the way he shouted. When the restaurant numbers were bad, she told me secrets no one else knew. What secrets? The doll's eyes found mine, and in them I saw something that made my blood freeze. Awareness, intelligence, and beneath that, rage. The man who worked in the restaurant kitchen. He was kind to her at first, gave her candy, taught her magic tricks, made her laugh when everything else in her life was hard. And then he taught her other things. Things that hurt. Things she couldn't tell anyone, because who would believe her? Her parents needed him. He was the best chef they'd ever had. My stomach turned. Sarah. She told me everything. Every violation. Every threat. Every time he hurt her, she would come home and hold me and whisper it all into my ear. And I listened. I absorbed it all. Her pain, her shame, her helpless fury. It went into me like water into dry earth. Where is Sarah now? The doll's head tilted further, at an angle no human neck could achieve. Sarah grew up. She stopped playing with dolls. She moved away, left me with her mother. But the things she told me, they stayed. They lived in me. They grew. That's not possible. You're a doll, an object. Am I? Are you so sure? You felt it, haven't you? The weight of old things, the presence they carry. We absorb the energy of our owners, their emotions, their experiences. Most objects absorb a little. A photograph that makes you sad, a wedding ring that feels warm. But I absorbed everything. Years of trauma, years of rage with nowhere to go. It changed me. Made me more than porcelain and silk. I wanted to leave, but I was transfixed. What do you want from me? Justice. The word hung in the air like smoke. I'm not Sarah. No, but you found me for a reason. You brought me home. You're sensitive to these things. I can feel it. You collect us, care for us. Understand that objects have stories. You can help me finish mine. How? The doll stood again, and this time I didn't flinch. She walked, actually walked, her small feet tapping against the dresser surface. To the edge nearest my bed. The man's name was David Martinez. He's still alive, still working, still finding children to hurt. How do you know that? I know. The same way I knew you would come. The same way I knew you would listen. Evil like that doesn't stop. It multiplies, spreads, finds new victims. I shook my head. I can't. I'm not a vigilante. I can't hurt someone. I'm not asking you to hurt him. I'm asking you to take me to him. Why? Those glass eyes met mine, and in them I saw the accumulated rage of all those years. All that suffering with no outlet, no justice, no recognition. Because I will do what Sarah couldn't. I will make him see. I will make him feel. And when I'm done, the world will be better for it. I should have called the police. Should have sought help. Should have done anything other than what I did. But I was curious. And beneath that curiosity was something darker. Something I'd never acknowledged my own rage. At the world's injustices, at the people who hurt children, at the systems that protected predators. Maybe I'd been collecting old things because they were safe, static, unable to hurt or be hurt. Maybe I'd been hiding from the messy, ugly reality of human cruelty. Maybe I wanted to see what would happen. How do I find him? I asked. She told me. She knew everything. Where he worked now. What restaurant, what shift. Information she shouldn't have had, couldn't have had, except that she did. 3 days later, I walked into a restaurant in Queens, carrying a large bag. Inside the bag was Emma. I asked for a table near the kitchen, said I was waiting for someone. I ordered coffee I didn't drink. When the moment was right, when the dinner rush was over and the kitchen was cleaning up, I went to the bathroom near the kitchen. I left the bag there, partially unzipped, the doll visible inside. Then I left the restaurant and walked 3 blocks away. I don't know exactly what happened. The news reports said only that a chef at the restaurant had been found in the wok, in freezer. Dead of hypothermia, though the freezer had been working perfectly. His face was frozen in an expression of terror. The police found no signs of foul play, no evidence of anyone else being involved. They also found a doll in the bathroom. Porcelain, Victorian era, very valuable. No one claimed it. I returned to my brownstone and found Emma sitting on my bed, exactly where I'd left her that morning. Impossible, since she was supposedly in police custody. But there she was. Her expression was peaceful now, content. "Thank you," she said, and her voice was different, Lighter, younger, satisfied. Is it over? I asked. For him, yes. For me, she paused, considering. I don't know. I've carried this for so long. Without it? You're Sarah's doll? Her friend. Her witness. Am I still her friend if she left me? If she moved on and forgot me? You remembered her, I said. Maybe that's friendship enough. The doll was silent for a long moment. Then, will you keep me? I don't know. Should I? I'm dangerous. You know that now. What I carry, what I've become. I'm not safe. Neither is the world, I said. That was 6 months ago. Emma still sits on my dresser. She doesn't move now, doesn't speak. To anyone else, she's just a beautiful antique doll. But sometimes, late at night, I feel her watching me. I feel the weight of what she knows, what she's done, and I find myself researching, looking for other Davids, other monsters who hurt children and get away with it. I've found 3 so far. I take notes. I keep files. Emma hasn't asked me to help her again. Not yet. But I know she will. And the terrible truth I've discovered about myself is this: when she does, I'll say yes. Because some stories deserve to end in justice, even if that justice comes from impossible sources. Even if it comes from the rage of a forgotten child, channeled through porcelain and glass and silk. Even if it makes me complicit in something I don't fully understand. I look at Emma now, in the dim light of my bedroom. She looks back, those rain-colored eyes reflecting nothing but my own face, distorted and strange. Who were you? I whisper. Before Sarah, did someone else own you? Did someone else whisper their pain into you? She doesn't answer. Maybe she doesn't know. Maybe consciousness like hers doesn't have a beginning, only accumulation. Pain building on pain, story layering on story. Until something inanimate becomes animated by sheer weight of human suffering. I've started having dreams about the girl again. But now I'm the one in the garden, and she's standing at a distance, watching me. She's older in these dreams, the age Sarah would be now. She's smiling, but it's not a happy smile. Thank you for taking care of her, she says. Thank you for understanding. Understanding what? I ask. That some wounds never heal. They just find different ways to bleed. I wake from these dreams with tears on my face, though I can't remember crying, and I look at Emma, perfect and pristine, on my dresser, and I wonder, how many other objects in the world carry stories like hers? How many have absorbed so much pain that they've become something more? And what happens when someone finally gives them permission to act on that pain? I don't know the answers. But I keep collecting. I keep bringing home old things with histories written in their surfaces, their cracks, their repairs. I listen to them in the quiet hours. I'm learning their language. And Emma watches, patient and present, waiting for the next name, the next story, the next ending that needs to be written. Story 6. The invitation arrived on heavy cream paper, the kind that spoke of old money and older traditions. Elegant script announced a private performance at the Belmont Theater, a venue I'd never heard of despite living in the city for 15 years. An evening of classical theater. It read, performance begins at 8 p.m. Attendance is mandatory. That last word bothered me. Mandatory. Not requested, not desired. Mandatory. I should have thrown it away. I should have recognized it for what it was. Something wrong wearing the mask of something cultured and refined. But I was lonely that autumn. My partner had left 6 months earlier, and I'd been filling my evenings with whatever distractions I could find. Art galleries, poetry readings, anything to avoid the silence of my apartment. So I went. The address led me to a part of the city I rarely visited, where old buildings leaned against each other like tired dancers, where the streetlights flickered with an irregular rhythm that suggested they were on the verge of giving up entirely. The Belmont Theater stood between a closed laundromat and a boarded-up bookstore, its facade crumbling but still maintaining traces of former grandeur. The marquee lights were on, spelling out TOIHT, Artier Kenny I Yell Logo, in bulbs that glowed with a sickly amber color. I'd heard of that play. Vaguely, something about it being cursed. Driving readers mad, never meant to be performed. But those were just stories, weren't they? Urban legends shared by theater students trying to scare each other. The doors were unlocked. Inside, the lobby was surprisingly clean, as if someone had been maintaining it even as the exterior decayed. Red velvet ropes cordoned off a path to the auditorium. Posters on the walls advertised productions from decades past, the paper yellowed and brittle. No box office, no ticket taker, no other patrons. Just silence and the smell of dust and something else. Something organic and slightly sweet, like flowers left too long in a vase. I followed the velvet ropes to the auditorium doors. They opened with a whisper, revealing rows of seats ascending into shadow. The stage was lit. A single spotlight illuminating a bare set. Just a few pieces of furniture suggesting a drawing room from another era. I sat in the middle of the theater, roughly 10 rows back. The seat cushion sighed beneath me, releasing more of that strange sweet smell. The house lights dimmed before I could change my mind about leaving. The curtain rose. A man stood center stage, dressed in elaborate period costume. His makeup was pale, theatrical, with dark circles drawn under his eyes. When he spoke, his voice carried perfectly despite no visible microphone. "Welcome," he said, looking directly at me. "We've been waiting for an audience." Something about the way he emphasized that last word made my skin crawl. The play began. I won't try to describe the plot coherently, because it didn't make sense even as I watched it. Scenes bled into each other without clear transitions. Characters appeared and disappeared without explanation. The dialogue was beautiful and terrible, full of phrases that sounded profound, but dissolved into meaninglessness when I tried to remember them. The actors moved with an unsettling grace, their gestures too fluid, too precise, inhuman in their perfection, and their eyes, when they looked out at the audience, at me, held no light, no spark of consciousness. They were windows into nothing. I tried to leave during what might have been the first act, but my legs wouldn't cooperate. They felt heavy, distant, like they belonged to someone else. I managed to shift in my seat, and that's when I noticed. The other seats were filling. People sat around me now, appearing as if they'd always been there. Men and women in various styles of dress, from Victorian formal wear to 1970s, fashioned to clothes that could have been from last year. They sat perfectly still, eyes fixed on the stage, not blinking, barely breathing. I tried to speak to the woman next to me. She wore a dress from the 1950s, pearls at her throat, her hair in careful curls. She didn't respond. Didn't acknowledge me at all. Just stared at the stage with an expression of rapt attention that verged on religious ecstasy. On stage. The actors continued their performance. One of them was delivering a monologue about masks and identity, about the space between what we pretend to be and what we truly are. The words washed over me, hypnotic and disturbing. "We are all performers," the actor said. "We are all playing roles, and once you understand that, once you truly accept it, you can never leave the theater. Because all the world's a stage, and you've finally found your proper place upon it." The audience around me began to move in unison, their heads tilting at the same angle, their hands folding in their laps in the same position, like puppets controlled by a single string. I fought against the heaviness in my limbs and managed to stand. The movement felt like pushing through deep water. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my body obeyed reluctantly, as if it had already begun to forget how. The actor on stage stopped mid-sentence and looked at me. "Leaving so soon?" he asked. "But you've only just arrived, and the performance has barely begun. We have so much to show you. So many acts, so many scenes, an eternity of scenes. I don't want to watch anymore," I said. My voice sounded thin, far away. "Oh, but it's not about watching. Not anymore." He smiled, and his teeth were too white, too perfect, too many. "You're not in the audience. You're part of the cast now. We all are. Every soul who sits in these seats joins the eternal performance." I stumbled toward the aisle. The other audience members turned their heads in perfect synchronization, watching me with those empty eyes. "Where do you think you're going?" A woman's voice called from the stage. A new actress had appeared, wearing a costume that seemed to shift and change as I looked at it. There are no exits during a performance. It's terribly rude. I ran, or tried to. My legs moved in slow motion, each step requiring enormous effort. Behind me, I heard the actors continuing their dialogue, heard the other audience members beginning to whisper among themselves. Not words, just sounds like wind through leaves or water over stones. The auditorium doors should have been right there. I'd walked through them 20 minutes ago. But now there were more rows of seats, stretching back and back into darkness, and every seat was filled with silent, watching people. "You see?" the actor on stage called out. The theater changes for every performance. It becomes what it needs to be. And right now, it needs to keep you. I pushed through a row of seats, climbing over the legs of audience members who didn't react, who didn't move, who just kept staring forward with those terrible empty eyes. My hands touched the walls, searching for a door, an exit, anything. The wallpaper was soft, organic. It moved slightly under my palms, pulsing with a rhythm that mimicked a heartbeat. On stage, the scene had changed. The actors were now performing what looked like my life. Scenes I remembered. My first day of school. My graduation. The night my partner left. They performed these moments with perfect accuracy, speaking in my voice, moving with my gestures. And then they performed moments I didn't remember. Moments that hadn't happened yet, or moments that had happened in some other version of my life. In one scene, I was old and alone. In another, I was giving a speech to thousands. In another, I was dying in a hospital bed, surrounded by people I didn't recognize. "Do you see?" the lead actor asked, breaking character to address me directly. We're not just performing a play. We're performing all plays, all stories, all possible lives. Every moment that ever was or could be or might have been. And you're part of it now. Your story is one thread in the infinite tapestry we weave here. I found a door. Finally. Hidden behind a curtain that hadn't been there moments before. I pushed through it and found myself backstage. The space was larger than should have been possible given the building's exterior. Catwalks extended up into darkness. Racks of costumes stretched in every direction. Props were stacked in precarious towers. Furniture, weapons, artifacts from every era and culture, and actors, dozens of them, hundreds, some in costume, some in various states of undress, all with that same empty expression, all moving with that same uncanny grace. They were rehearsing scenes, delivering lines to each other or to no one, practicing deaths and births, marriages and murders, comedies and tragedies, an endless cycle of performance with no beginning and no end. One of them noticed me, an older woman in a costume that might have been Elizabethan. She approached with a gentle smile. "Oh, you're confused," she said kindly. "That's normal for new arrivals. You'll understand soon. We all do. Eventually. I don't want to understand. I want to leave. But you can't leave. Don't you see? The Belmont doesn't let anyone leave once they've seen the performance. We become part of it. We sustain it. Our presence, our energy, our very existence feeds the theater and keeps it alive. This is insane. Perhaps. But insanity and theater have always been close cousins." She gestured around us. "We're not suffering here. We're creating, endlessly creating. Every story ever told, every character ever conceived, we bring them all to life. It's beautiful in its way. I don't care if it's beautiful. I want to go home." Her expression shifted to something like pity. "There is no home. Not anymore. There's only the stage. Only the performance. Only the eternal now of creation and recreation." I ran deeper into the backstage area. The woman didn't follow. None of them did. They just returned to their rehearsals. Their endless preparation for shows that might never be performed or might be performed forever. I found stairs leading down. I took them, descending into darkness, my hands trailing along walls that felt increasingly less like walls and more like something else, something alive. The basement was full of mirrors, hundreds of them, in various sizes and frames, arranged to reflect each other infinitely. And in each reflection I saw myself, but not quite myself. Variations, other versions, some subtle, some dramatic. In one mirror, I wore period costume and held a skull, performing Hamlet. In another, I was painted gold, frozen in a statuesque pose. In another, I was ancient and wrinkled, still performing, still speaking lines. In another, I was young, just arriving at the theater, holding the invitation. You're seeing all your possible roles. A voice said behind me. I spun around. The lead actor from the stage stood there, but up close I could see that his makeup wasn't makeup. His face was genuinely pale, genuinely wrong. The dark circles under his eyes went too deep, suggesting hollows in his skull. Every person contains multitudes, he continued. Every person is every possible version of themselves. The theater simply makes that literal. Here, you can be all of them. Live all your possible stories simultaneously. I don't want that. What do you want, then? The question stopped me. What did I want? I'd come here because I was lonely, looking for distraction, trying to avoid confronting the emptiness in my life. And now I was trapped in a place that offered infinite stories, infinite roles, infinite ways to be anyone except myself. I want, I said slowly, to be real. The actor tilted his head. What is real? You perform every day. You play roles for everyone you meet. Son, daughter, employee, friend, stranger. Every interaction is a performance. At least here, we're honest about it. It's not the same, isn't it? He moved closer, and I could smell that sweet decay smell stronger now. It came from him, from all of them. The smell of things preserved past their natural expiration, maintained by will and ritual rather than actual life. The theater has been here for a very long time, he said. Longer than the city around it. It was built on older foundations, which were built on older foundations still. People have always gathered to tell stories, to perform, to transform themselves into something other. This place is just the ultimate expression of that impulse. How long have you been here? I don't remember. I performed here once in the 1920s. A small role in a production of Macbeth, and the theater liked me, kept me, made me part of its repertoire. He smiled that too wide smile. Now I'm the lead in every production. Lucky me. Happy. I don't think happiness applies anymore. I simply am. I exist. I perform. And in performing, I continue to exist. It's a fair trade. I look back at the mirrors, at all my possible selves staring back at me. What if I refuse? What if I just sit down and stop participating? Then you sit, and you watch. And eventually, you'll start to forget what you were before you came here. You'll forget your name, your history, your identity outside these walls. And when there's nothing left of the old you, The theater will give you a new role. You'll stand up, put on a costume, and join the eternal performance without even realizing you've made the choice. There has to be a way out. Perhaps. Every theater has an exit. But finding it requires understanding what you're really trying to escape from. He gestured around us. Is it the theater you want to leave? Or is it the performance? Because if it's the latter, well, you'll find that harder than you think. He turned and walked back toward the stairs, leaving me alone among the mirrors. I sat down on the floor and tried to think clearly. The heaviness that had been weighing on me since the play began was stronger now. Like gravity itself had increased. My thoughts felt sluggish, difficult to hold on to. I thought about what the actor said, about performance, about roles, about the way we present ourselves to the world. He was right, in a horrible way. I had been performing for years, being the person others expected me to be, saying what I thought I should say, doing what I thought I should do. And when my partner left, they'd said I didn't know who I was anymore, that I'd become a collection of reactions rather than a real person. Maybe that's why the invitation found me. Maybe that's why the theater wanted me. Because I was already halfway hollow, already halfway a performance with nothing behind it. The mirrors showed me all my possible roles, but none of them showed me just being myself. Because I didn't know who that was anymore. I stood up, my legs protesting. I looked at my reflection in the nearest mirror and made a decision. No, I said to myself, to the theater, to whatever was listening. I don't accept this. I'm not a role. I'm not a performance. I'm a person, and I'm leaving. The mirrors rippled like water. I don't care what you offer. I don't care how many stories you can show me. I want my story. My real, messy, uncertain story. Not infinite possibilities. Just one real life. The basement began to change. The mirrors faded, revealing brick walls. Old, genuine brick. And in the brick, cracks. And through the cracks, I could see light. Real light. Daylight. I approached the wall and pushed. The bricks crumbled easily, revealing a passage beyond. A tunnel leading up toward something other than the theater. Behind me, I heard footsteps. The actors were coming, all of them drawn by my rebellion. They filled the basement, surrounding me, blocking my path. But they didn't touch me. They just watched with those empty eyes as I climbed through the hole in the wall. You'll be back. The lead actor called after me. Everyone comes back eventually. Because out there, you'll still be performing. Still playing roles. And one day, you'll realize you'd rather be honest about it. Rather be part of the eternal performance than pretend to be real in a world that's just as much theater as this place. I didn't answer. I just crawled forward through the tunnel, through dirt and darkness, toward the light. I emerged in an alley behind the theater, morning sun harsh and bright. The sound of traffic, the smell of garbage and exhaust, real. Undeniably real. I looked back. The hole I'd climbed through was gone. Just solid wall. and when I walked around to the front of the building, the Belmont Theater looked completely abandoned. No lights on the marquee, boards on the windows, a condemned notice on the door. I checked my phone. 2 hours had passed since I'd arrived. Just 2 hours. But it felt like I'd been inside for days. I went home, showered, changed clothes, tried to return to normal life. But the actor's words stayed with me. Because he was right. In a way I didn't want to admit. I was performing. Every day, every interaction, playing roles, wearing masks, presenting versions of myself that weren't quite real. The difference was, now I knew it. Now I was conscious of it, and consciousness made all the difference. I started making changes, small ones at first, saying what I actually thought instead of what I thought I should say, doing things because I wanted to, not because others expected it. Slowly, painfully, I began to excavate who I actually was underneath all the performances. It's been 5 years since that night. I've never received another invitation. But sometimes, late at night, I'll be walking past an old building and I'll hear music from inside. The sound of a stage production in progress. And I'll wonder if it's the Belmont, moved to a new location, waiting for new audience members who are hollow enough, uncertain enough, performative enough to be absorbed into its endless repertoire. And I'll walk faster, because I know now that the theater isn't really a place. It's a state of mind. It's what happens when you forget that there's a difference between the role and the person playing it. When you become nothing but the performance. I'm still learning to be real, to be present, to be myself rather than a carefully constructed presentation of self. It's harder than being part of the eternal performance would have been, but it's mine. This messy, uncertain, genuine life is mine, and that makes all the difference. Sleep now, and if you dream of theaters, of stages, of audiences that watch with empty eyes, remember who you are beneath the performance. Remember that you're real. Remember that you can always choose to leave the stage, even if it means walking into uncertainty. The performance will go on without you. It always does. In Story 7, I stepped back, my heart racing, or at least the memory of a heart racing. The woman continued down the street without breaking stride, disappearing around a corner. I looked down at my hands, flexing my fingers, watching them move in response to my will. They looked solid enough, real enough. But something was fundamentally wrong. That's when I noticed the others. They stood in doorways and leaned against walls. Figures that were almost but not quite substantial. Some looked confused, like me, checking their pockets and trying to get the attention of passers-by who walked right through them. Others stood perfectly still, watching the living world with expressions of profound longing. A few seemed to have been there so long they'd become part of the architecture, their outlines blurred and fading, more suggestion than form. We were ghosts, or souls, or something in between, people who'd become separated from our bodies, untethered from the world we'd inhabited, lost in the spaces between here and elsewhere. An elderly man stood near me, transparent enough that I could see the brick wall through his chest. He must have noticed my dawning realization, because he nodded slowly, a gesture of grim solidarity. "How long have you been here?" I asked. "I don't know anymore," he said, his voice thin and distant, like hearing someone speak from the other end of a long corridor. "Days, maybe, or years. Time doesn't work the same way for us. What happened to us? Why are we here?" He shrugged, a gesture that made his form ripple like heat shimmer on asphalt. Different reasons, I think. Some of us died, but didn't realize it. Some are still alive, but dreaming so deeply we've come loose. Some are just lost, separated from ourselves somehow. The why doesn't matter much. What matters is finding the way back. Back where? To a body. Any body. His eyes, clouded and fading, fixed on a young woman walking past us, talking into her phone, completely unaware of our presence. The living have something we need. Substance. Reality. If we can just get inside, find a way to attach ourselves to them, we can be real again. A chill moved through me. Not cold exactly, since I couldn't feel temperature anymore, but the emotional equivalent. "You mean possess them? Borrow them?" He corrected, though the distinction seemed semantic. "Just until we can figure out where we belong. Just until we can remember who we were." He paused, studying me. "You're still new. You still think there's another option. But the longer you stay here, the more you fade. Eventually, you'll be like them." He gestured to the figures I'd noticed earlier, the ones who'd become part of the walls and doorways. So faded they were barely visible even to me. They weren't watching the living anymore. They'd stopped hoping. They were just echoes now, waiting to dissolve completely. "No," I said, feeling a surge of panic that had nowhere to go in my insubstantial form. "There has to be another way. I need to find my body, my real body. I need to get home." "Good luck," the old man said, but his tone suggested he didn't believe in luck anymore. I left him there and started walking, trying to orient myself. The street looked like dozens of others in the city, lined with shops and restaurants and office buildings. People moved past me in streams, living their lives, heading home from work or out to dinner or to meet friends. None of them could see me. I was invisible to them, irrelevant, already erased. But I could see them with perfect clarity. More than that, I could sense things about them. Emotions radiated from the living like heat from a fire. I could feel their anxiety and contentment, their boredom and excitement, their small joys and nagging worries. It was overwhelming at first, this flood of sensation from hundreds of individual lives. But gradually I learned to filter it, to focus on one person at a time. A man in a business suit rushed past, his mind churning with work problems and deadline pressures. A teenager slouched by, radiating sullen resentment and secret hope in equal measure. A mother walked hand in hand with her young daughter, her love for the child so intense and pure it made me ache with something I couldn't quite name. I wanted what they had. not their lives specifically, but their presence, their reality, their connection to the physical world. I wanted to feel hungry and tired, to taste food and smell rain, to be solid and seen and real. The sun had set completely now, and the street took on a different quality in full darkness. The yellow streetlights created islands of visibility separated by pools of shadow. And in those shadows, I began to see more clearly. There were dozens of us. No, hundreds, scattered throughout the streets. Lost souls wandering the city, looking for a way back to substance and form. Some walked alone, like me, testing their non-existent boundaries, he trying to understand the rules of this new existence. Others had gathered in small groups, whispering to each other in those thin, distant voices, and a disturbing few, had discovered what the old man had told me about. They'd learned to attach themselves to the living. I watched one do it. A middle-aged woman who'd probably been lost much longer than me, her form already beginning to blur at the edges. She approached a young man standing at a bus stop, studying him, circling him like a predator assessing prey. Then, with a movement too quick to follow, she pressed herself against him, her insubstantial form merging with his solid one. The young man jerked, his whole body going rigid for a moment. His eyes widened, then his expression changed, became older somehow, confused, frightened. He looked down at his hands with wonder and horror, flexing them as if seeing them for the first time. Then he started walking, moving with the awkward gait of someone learning to operate unfamiliar machinery. The ghost, the lost soul, had climbed inside him, taking temporary residence in his body, experiencing physical sensation again through borrowed flesh. I could see her satisfaction, feel her relief at being solid again, even if it was a fragile and temporary solidity. But I could also see the young man, still present, but pushed aside, a passenger in his own body, unable to control his movements or speak, or do anything but watch helplessly as a stranger operated his limbs. I turned away, nauseated, or the emotional equivalent, since I had no stomach anymore to feel sick. I wouldn't do that. I couldn't. There had to be another way to get back to where I belonged, to find my real body, to wake up from whatever this was. I walked through the night, through streets that became increasingly familiar. I was heading toward my apartment, guided by muscle memory and habit, even though I had no muscles anymore, and habits belonged to a life I was no longer living. Other lost souls drifted past me, some acknowledging my presence with nods or hollow stares, others too far gone to notice anything. I wondered about their stories. Had they died in their sleep, passed so peacefully they didn't realize they'd crossed over? Had they been in accidents, their consciousness separating from their bodies in moments of trauma? Or were they like me, simply waking up on a street corner with no memory of how they'd gotten there? A young woman floated. There's no better word for it. Across an intersection, her feet not quite touching the ground. She was crying, though no tears fell from her eyes, and she kept reaching toward people. trying to grab their arms or touch their faces, her hands passing through them like smoke. "Please," she kept saying, her voice barely a whisper. "Please, I need help. I need to get home. My daughter is waiting for me. No one heard her." No one stopped. They went about their lives, blind to her desperation, deaf to her pleas. I wanted to help her, but what could I do? I was as lost as she was, as powerless and insubstantial. We were all ghosts haunting a world that had moved on without us. I reached my apartment building just after midnight. The familiar red brick facade looked exactly as it always had. Down to the cracked window on the third floor and the crooked awning over the entrance. I walked through the front door, literally through it, my form passing through the solid wood without resistance, and climbed the stairs to the fourth floor. The hallway was empty and quiet. Most of my neighbors were asleep. Their apartments dark except for the occasional nightlight or the blue glow of a television left on. I could feel them in there, sense their presence as blurred patches of warmth and emotion behind closed doors. My door was locked, of course, but that didn't matter anymore. I walked through it as easily as I'd walked through the entrance downstairs. My apartment looked exactly as I'd left it, whenever I'd left it. A coffee mug sat on the kitchen counter, still half full of cold coffee. My laptop was open on the dining table, screen dark. A book lay face down on the couch, its spine cracked at the place where I'd stopped reading. Everything was familiar, comforting in its mundane normalcy. Except I couldn't touch any of it. When I reached for the coffee mug, my hand passed through it. When I tried to sit on the couch, I sank through the cushions like they weren't there. But the most disturbing thing was the bedroom. I approached the doorway slowly, some instinct warning me about what I might find. The door was partially open, and through the gap I could see the bed, and in the bed, covered by blankets, breathing slowly and evenly in deep sleep. Me. My body lay there, eyes closed, chest rising and falling with mechanical regularity. It looked peaceful, undisturbed, as if it had been sleeping for hours, or days, or longer. I stood in the doorway, staring at myself, trying to understand. Was I in a coma? Was this some kind of out of body experience brought on by illness or injury? Or had I simply fallen asleep one night and somehow failed to wake up properly, my consciousness separating from my physical form? I approached the bed and studied my sleeping face. It looked younger than I remembered, more relaxed. The tension I usually carried in my jaw had released. The worry lines on my forehead had smoothed. My body looked content without me in it, as if it had taken the opportunity of my absence to finally rest properly. I tried to climb back in, to merge with my physical form, the way I'd seen other lost souls merge with strangers on the street. I lay down on top of my body, trying to align myself perfectly, trying to sink back into my flesh. Nothing happened. It was like trying to fit the wrong puzzle piece into a space. There was resistance, a fundamental incompatibility. My body, my actual body, rejected me. or I'd forgotten how to inhabit it, or the connection had been severed in some way I didn't understand and couldn't repair. I tried again and again, pressing myself against my sleeping form, willing myself to re-enter, to wake up, to remember how to be physical. But each attempt ended the same way. I remained hovering above my body, separate and insubstantial, while my flesh continued its unconscious breathing below. Exhaustion finally stopped me. Not physical exhaustion, since I had no physical form to tire, but a deep weariness of spirit that made continuing seem pointless. I sat on the floor beside my bed, watching myself sleep, and wondered if this was how it would be forever. My body sleeping endlessly, while my consciousness drifted through the world as a ghost. He able to see and sense everything but touch nothing, matter to no one. That's when I heard the sound in the living room. It was subtle, barely noticeable. The soft displacement of air, the sense of a presence where no presence should be. I stood and drifted back through the bedroom door. Another ghost stood in my living room, examining my bookshelf with interest. He was middle, aged, slightly overweight, wearing clothes that looked like they were from a different decade. Unlike me, he seemed comfortable with his insubstantial state, moving through my apartment with confidence and purpose. Interesting collection, he said, not looking at me. Lot of philosophy, psychology, books about consciousness and the nature of self. Makes sense. What are you doing in my apartment? Same thing you've been doing. Exploring. Trying to understand. He turned to face me, and his eyes were sharp, more focused than those of most lost souls I'd seen. But unlike you, I've been at this much longer. I've learned things, like how to break into people's homes, bodies, lives. The barriers mean less than you think when you're like us. He gestured vaguely at his transparent form. I've been watching you. You're newly separated, still trying to get back to your body. It won't work. How do you know? Because I tried the same thing when it first happened to me. 23 years ago. By the living world's calendar. My body is still there, in a hospital, on machines that keep it breathing and fed. My family visits sometimes, talks to it, plays music, shows it pictures. But I can't get back in. The door only locks from one direction. 23 years. The number hit me like a physical blow would have, if I could still feel physical blows. So we're just stuck. Forever. Unless we find another way in. His gaze drifted toward the bedroom, where my body continued its peaceful sleep. Your body won't accept you anymore. But it might accept someone else. Someone who knows how to slip in through the cracks. How to convince flesh that it's being inhabited by its rightful owner. I understood what he was suggesting, and the horror of it made me want to scream. No, absolutely not. This is my body, which you can't use, he pointed out, his tone reasonable, almost kind. It's just sitting there, wasting away slowly, while you float around as a ghost. At least if someone inhabited it, it would be lived in, cared for, used. By you, by me, yes. I'd be good to it if that helps. I'd exercise it, feed it properly, take it places and do things. I'd give it a better life than you were giving it, honestly. You weren't taking very good care of yourself. He was right about that last part. I'd been neglecting my health, eating poorly, sleeping irregularly, treating my body like a machine that existed solely to carry my brain around. But that didn't give him the right to it. "Get out," I said, putting as much force as I could into the words, even though I had no force to put behind them. He smiled sadly. "You can't make me leave. You can't touch me any more than you can touch the living. We're equal here, both powerless, both just hoping for a chance to be real again." He moved toward the bedroom. "I'll make you an offer, though. A trade. You help me get into your body. Help me convince it to accept me, and I'll find yours. Your original body, wherever it is, and I'll make sure it's cared for. I have connections, other lost souls who've learned to work together, to help each other. We can track down your physical form, make sure it's not suffering. And in exchange, you steal my life. In exchange, I live a life. Your life is already gone. You're just too new to accept it yet." I wanted to attack him, to drive him out of my apartment, with violence or threats. But I was as insubstantial as fog, as powerless as a shadow. All I could do was watch as he drifted into the bedroom and approached my sleeping body. He stood beside the bed for a long moment, studying my physical form with an expression of intense concentration. Then he began to lower himself onto it, aligning his ghostly shape with my solid one. I felt it the moment he made contact. A wrongness, a violation. As if someone had reached into my chest and grabbed my heart. My body jerked, thrashing under the blankets, fighting the intrusion instinctively, even though my conscious mind wasn't there to direct the resistance. The ghost pressed harder, trying to force his way in through whatever mysterious barriers separated soul from flesh. My body fought back, convulsing, twisting, rejecting the foreign presence. And then something unexpected happened. The connection I'd been unable to make, the link between my consciousness and my physical form, suddenly snapped into place. Not fully, not completely, but enough. I felt my body again, distantly, as if through layers of cotton and fog. I felt its rejection of the intruder, its instinctive recognition that this was wrong. I reached for that feeling, focused on it, strengthened it. My body was mine. This flesh had carried me for 32 years. It knew me, even if I'd forgotten how to inhabit it properly. The other ghost was stronger, more experienced, more skilled at navigating the spaces between physical and spiritual. But I had one advantage. He didn't. This body was mine. It recognized me in ways that went deeper than consciousness or will. Cellular memory that existed in bone and blood and neural pathways worn smooth by decades of habitation. I pushed against him, not with force, but with belonging. I was supposed to be here. He wasn't. My body responded, its rejection of the intruder intensifying. The ghost stumbled back, pulled away from my physical form, by the strength of its resistance. His expression shifted from determination to shock to anger. "You can't stop this," he said. "You can't stay out here forever. Eventually, you'll fade, or I'll get stronger, or someone else will come along. This body will be inhabited by someone. It might as well be me. Get out of my apartment." He studied me for a long moment, and I could see him calculating, weighing options, considering strategies. Then, to my surprise, he nodded. "For now," he agreed, "but I'll be back. We're everywhere. The lost souls. Watching, waiting, looking for empty vessels. You can't guard your body every minute of every day. Eventually, you'll slip. And when you do, someone will be there to take advantage." He drifted through the wall and was gone, leaving me alone with my sleeping body and the terrible knowledge of what I was facing. I sat beside the bed again, watching myself breathe, and understood my situation more clearly now. I was trapped between worlds. Not quite dead, not quite alive. Separated from my physical form by a barrier I didn't know how to cross. And there were others like me, lost souls desperate enough to steal bodies that didn't belong to them, to inhabit stolen flesh just to feel real again. My body was vulnerable. As long as it lay here sleeping, empty and unguarded, it was an invitation to every ghost desperate enough to take advantage. I needed to find a way back in. Properly, completely. Not just the distant partial connection I'd felt when defending against the intruder. I needed to remember how to be physical, how to inhabit flesh, how to wake up. But I didn't know how. And the longer I stayed separated, the more I faded. I could already feel it. A subtle thinning, a loss of definition. As if my consciousness was slowly dissolving into the ambient awareness of the world around me. The night passed slowly. I stayed by my body, watching it sleep, trying repeatedly to slip back inside. Each attempt failed, but each one taught me something. There were barriers, yes, but they weren't solid. They flexed and shifted, responding to my efforts. With enough practice, enough determination, maybe I could find the way through. As dawn approached, painting my bedroom windows with pale gray light, I felt other presences gathering outside my apartment. Lost souls drawn by the knowledge that an empty body lay vulnerable here. They waited in the hallway, on the street below, in the spaces between walls where ghosts could drift, waiting for their chance. I looked at my sleeping face and made a decision. I couldn't let them have it. I couldn't let some stranger wake up in my body, live my life, inhabit my flesh. Whatever it took, however long it required, I would find my way back in. Or I would guard this empty shell forever, a ghost haunting its own life, keeping watch over the body it could no longer inhabit, but refuse to surrender. The sun rose fully, light streaming through the windows, and my body finally stirred. Its eyes opened, my eyes, blinking in the morning brightness. For a moment, I felt a surge of hope. Maybe I'd gotten back in without realizing it. Maybe I'd woken up. But my body's eyes looked around the room with confusion, then down at its hands with wonder. Someone else was looking out through my eyes now. Someone who'd slipped in during one of my failed attempts to re-enter. Someone who'd found the way through barriers I still couldn't navigate. My body sat up, stretched, stood. It walked to the bathroom mirror and studied its reflection. My reflection, with satisfaction. Then it smiled, and I knew with absolute certainty that the person wearing my face wasn't me. I screamed, but no sound emerged. I reached for my stolen body, but my hands passed through it like smoke. I tried to push the intruder out the way. I'd pushed out the ghost the night before, but I couldn't find that connection again. Couldn't summon that sense of belonging. My body dressed itself in my clothes, ate my breakfast, picked up my phone, and scrolled through my messages. It moved through my life with casual confidence, learning my routines, adapting to my habits, becoming me more convincingly with every passing minute. And I could only watch, helpless and fading, as someone else lived the life I'd lost, inhabited the flesh I'd failed to reclaim, existed in the world I'd been separated from. By noon, my body had left the apartment, heading out into the world to live my stolen day. And I followed, a ghost trailing behind my own physical form, watching a stranger use my face and voice and hands to interact with a reality I could no longer touch. The Lost Soul Street extends in all directions, invisible to the living, populated by the separated and displaced. We wander through the city of our lives, looking for ways back in, looking for empty vessels, looking for anything that might restore the reality we've lost. Some of us fight, trying to reclaim what's ours. Some of us give up, accepting the slow fade into nothing. And some of us make the terrible choice to take what we can't rightfully have, to climb into borrowed flesh and pretend it's ours. I don't know which kind I'll become, but I know I'm still here, still watching, still hoping that somewhere in the space between consciousness and form, there's a way back to the life I've lost. The street extends in all directions, and I keep walking, don't remember dying. That's the first thing I should tell you, the most important detail. There was no moment of transition, no flash of white light or tunnel calling me toward elsewhere. I simply woke up on a street corner at dusk, disoriented and cold, with no memory of how I'd gotten there. The street was familiar in the way places sometimes are in dreams, recognizable in its general features, but wrong in its specifics. The buildings were the right height and shape for the downtown district, near where I lived. But the storefronts were different. The signs advertising businesses I'd never heard of. The streetlights were casting their pools of yellow illumination. Even though the sun hadn't quite finished setting, painting everything in shades of amber and purple. I checked my pockets for my phone, my wallet, anything that might orient me. Empty. I was wearing the clothes I'd put on that morning. Jeans, a gray sweater. Comfortable shoes. But they felt somehow lighter on my body, as if they were made of tissue paper rather than fabric. A woman walked past me, moving with purpose, her heels clicking on the pavement. "Excuse me," I said, reaching out but not quite touching her arm. Can you tell me what street this is? She didn't respond. She didn't even glance at me. She walked right through the space where I'd been standing, as if I wasn't there at all. I felt a sensation as she passed. Not exactly cold, but a sort of absence, a momentary void where sensation should have been. Story 8. I've always been fascinated by reflections. As a child, I would stand in front of mirrors for long stretches, studying the person looking back at me, wondering if they were truly identical, or if there were subtle differences I hadn't yet learned to detect. My mother used to scold me for it, telling me that staring too long at your own reflection was vanity, or worse, an invitation for something to look back. I'm 32 now, and I still find myself drawn to mirrors, though I've learned to be more discreet about it. Tonight, alone in my apartment on the 7th floor of a building that was old when my grandparents were young, I'm standing in front of my bathroom mirror at 11:47 p.m., watching condensation from my shower slowly evaporate from the glass. The steam has left patterns on the surface, abstract shapes that could be anything or nothing. I wipe a clear circle with my palm, and my face emerges from the fog like something surfacing from deep water. My eyes look darker than usual in this light, the circles beneath them more pronounced. I haven't been sleeping well lately. There's a game I read about online. Late one night, when insomnia had me scrolling through forums about urban legends and supernatural challenges. It's called the Midnight Stare, and the rules are simple at exactly midnight. Turn off all the lights in your home except for one candle. Place the candle near a mirror. Look at your reflection without blinking for as long as you can manage. Don't look away. Don't break eye contact. If you do it correctly, they say, you'll see your true self, the person you would have been if every choice you'd made had been different. The shadow version of your life that exists in parallel to this one. I told myself I wouldn't try it. These things are always fake, designed to prey on the suggestible and the lonely. But here I am at 11:52 p.m., placing a thick white candle on the bathroom counter, fishing through drawers for matches, telling myself I'm just curious, that I'll stop if anything feels wrong. The candle's flame catches, and I adjust it so it sits to the right of the sink, casting my face in warm, flickering light. I turn off the bathroom light, then walk through my apartment, turning off every other light. The living room lamp, the kitchen overhead, the small night light in the hallway that usually burns until dawn. The apartment becomes a cavern of shadows punctuated by that single point of light, calling me back to the bathroom. My phone reads 11:57 p.m. 3 minutes. I set it on the counter, screen down, and look at myself in the mirror. Even now, in candlelight, I can see the exhaustion in my face. I work too much, sleep too little, exist in a state of constant low-level anxiety that has become so familiar, I barely notice it anymore. The person in the mirror looks like they're waiting for something, though I don't know what. 11:58 p.m. I think about the choices that led me here. The job I took that pays well but hollows me out a little more each day. The relationship I ended because I was afraid of commitment. The friends I've let drift away because maintaining connections requires energy I don't have. Each decision seemed small at the time, reasonable, even necessary. But they've accumulated into a life that feels like it belongs to someone else, someone I'm only impersonating. 11:59 p.m. The candle flame dances, making the shadows on my face shift and change. My reflection seems to breathe independently of me, its chest rising and falling in a rhythm slightly off from my own. I tell myself it's an optical illusion, a trick of the flickering light. I don't look away. The numbers on my phone change. 12:00 a.m. I lock eyes with my reflection and don't blink. The first 30 seconds are easy. I've stared at myself before, long enough to notice that my left eye sits slightly higher than my right, that my smile tilts more to one side, that there's a small scar on my chin from falling off a bicycle when I was 7. These details are familiar, comfortable in their mundane specificity. But as the seconds stretch into a minute, something begins to shift. My reflection's eyes seem to darken, the pupils expanding until there's hardly any color left. The shadows on my face deepen, pooling in the hollows beneath my cheekbones, collecting in the space between my eyebrows. The face in the mirror looks gaunt, almost skeletal, as if I'm seeing through skin to the bone structure beneath. I'm aware of my eyes beginning to water, the physical need to blink becoming urgent. But I don't look away. The rules were clear: maintain eye contact, no matter what. The bathroom feels colder now, as if the temperature has dropped 10 degrees in the last minute. I can see my breath, small clouds of vapor that the mirror, me, doesn't seem to be producing. Their chest, my chest, continues its strange, asynchronous breathing, rising when mine falls, falling when mine rises. The candle flame gutters, nearly going out, then surges back stronger than before. In that moment of intense light, I see something that makes my stomach clench. My reflection smiled. I didn't smile. My mouth remained in its neutral position, slightly downturned from concentration and fatigue. But the person in the mirror, the thing wearing my face, definitely smiled. It was a small expression, barely a curl at the corners of the mouth, but unmistakable. Every instinct screams at me to look away, to break eye contact, to turn on the lights and laugh at my own foolishness. But I'm paralyzed, caught in the gaze of my own eyes, reflected back at me. The reflection's smile widens, showing teeth that seem slightly too white, slightly too many. Finally, my reflection says, though its lips don't move. The word arrives directly in my mind, bypassing my ears entirely. I've been waiting so long for you to look. My heart hammers against my ribs, but I force myself to remain still, to keep my eyes locked on the mirror. This isn't real, I tell myself. It's a hallucination brought on by not blinking, by staring too long, by the power of suggestion and the flickering candlelight, creating patterns my tired brain is interpreting as meaningful. You don't believe in me, the voice continues, amused. That's all right. Most people don't believe until it's too late. But you invited me in. You lit the candle. You held the stare. And now. The reflection raises its hand, my hand, and presses it against the surface of the mirror from the other side. I can see every detail of the lines on the palm, the ridges of the fingerprints, the small scar from a paper cut I got 3 weeks ago. It's my hand in every particular, except it's moving independently of my will. Now we can finally trade places, it says. My body moves without my consent. My arm rises, matching the reflection's posture. My hand approaches the mirror. I'm trying to stop it, trying to lower my arm or clench my fist, or do anything other than what I'm doing. But I've become a passenger in my own flesh, watching helplessly as my palm presses against the cool glass. The moment our hands meet, mine and my reflections, the mirror surface ripples like water. The glass, which should be solid and unyielding, becomes fluid and permeable. I can feel it moving against my skin, cool and slippery, as if I've plunged my hand into a pool of mercury. And then I feel the other hand, the reflection's hand. On the other side of that fluid barrier, it grabs my wrist. The grip is strong, far stronger than my own strength should be. It pulls, and I'm drawn forward, my body pressing against the mirror. The glass continues to ripple and flow, offering no resistance. I'm sinking into it, or it's sinking into me. I can't tell which. The candlelight flickers wildly, casting manic shadows that dance across the walls. In the moment before I'm pulled through completely, I see my reflection clearly. It's still smiling, but there's nothing human in that expression now. The eyes are too bright, too aware, filled with a hunger that has nothing to do with food or any physical need. It's the hunger of something that has been trapped, something that has been watching and waiting and planning its escape through the thin barrier that separates its world from mine. Thank you. It whispers as we pass each other in that fluid space between mirror and reality, between here and there, between who I am and who I could have been. And then I'm through. I stumble backward, disoriented, and find myself in a bathroom that's identical to mine, but reversed. The sink is on the left instead of the right. The towel rack hangs on the opposite wall. The candle burns on the wrong side of the counter. Everything is familiar, but wrong. Like remembering a song, but getting every note slightly off key. I turn and see, through what I know now is the mirror, my bathroom, my actual bathroom, with my reflection standing there. Except it's not my reflection anymore. It's me, the original me. But I'm on this side now, and they're on that side, and they're raising their hand in a small, mocking wave. They lean forward and blow out the candle. The darkness is immediate and absolute. I can't see anything, not the mirror, not the bathroom around me, not my own hands when I raise them in front of my face. I'm encased in blackness so complete it feels solid, pressing against my eyes and mouth and skin. I try to speak, but no sound comes out. I try to move, but I can't tell if my body is responding. There's no sense of space here, no up or down, no forward or back. I'm suspended in nothing, alone with my racing thoughts and the slowly building realization of what I've done. Time passes, minutes or hours or days. I have no way to know. The darkness is unchanging, eternal. I think about my life, the real one I had before this moment. My apartment with its familiar furniture. My job with its mundane frustrations. The coffee shop on the corner where the barista knows. My order. All the small, ordinary things that constituted my existence, that I took for granted or actively resented, that I wished were different. I would give anything to have them back now. A light appears, distant and small, like a star in a vast night sky. I move toward it, or it moves toward me, I can't tell which. As it grows closer, I see that it's coming from beyond a surface, a barrier, a mirror. I press my face against it and see my bathroom again. The candle has been relit. In the flickering light, I see myself, the other me, the one who traded places, living my life. They're brushing their teeth, getting ready for bed, performing the simple ritual I've done every night for years. They look content, comfortable in my skin, pleased with the exchange. I pound on the mirror, but it's solid now, unyielding glass that won't ripple or flow. I scream, but the sound doesn't travel. I'm trapped on this side, in this reversed world where everything is wrong, where I'm the reflection now, condemned to watch my stolen life unfold without me. The other me, the thing wearing my face, looks at the mirror and sees me. They smile that too wide smile, showing those two white teeth. Don't worry, they mouth, knowing I'll understand. I'll take good care of everything. I'll go to your job. I'll pay your bills. I'll live your life better than you ever did. And you. They lean closer to the mirror, their face filling my vision. You'll stay here and watch. You'll see all the choices I make, all the ways I improve on your mistakes. You'll watch me become the version of you that you should have been all along. And maybe, if you're very lucky, someday another fool will light a candle and stare too long, and you'll get your chance to trade places again. They turn away from the mirror, turn off the bathroom light, and leave me in darkness once more. But not complete darkness. There's a faint ambient light now. The kind that filters in from streetlights through windows. The kind that allows shapes to be distinguished, if you wait long enough for your eyes to adjust. I can see the reversed bathroom around me, can see the mirror that's now a window into the world I've lost. Days pass, or what I perceive as days. The other me lives my life with disturbing efficiency. They wake up on time, eat healthier meals, respond to emails I'd been putting off. They call my mother, something I haven't done in weeks. They're better at being me than I ever was. At night, they sometimes stop in front of the mirror, looking at their reflection, looking at me, with satisfaction. They don't gloat or mock anymore. They don't need to. The simple fact of their contentment, of their success at inhabiting my existence, is message enough. I explore the reversed world I now inhabit, though there's not much to explore. It's my apartment, but wrong. Doors that should lead outside open onto blank walls. Windows show views of a city that's almost like mine, but slightly off. Buildings in wrong positions. Streets that curve the opposite way. A sky that's the right color, but the wrong shade. And there are others here. I see them sometimes in other mirrors, other reflections. People who look exhausted and desperate, pressing their faces against glass surfaces, watching lives they can no longer touch. Some have been here longer than others. I can tell by their eyes, by the depth of resignation in their expressions. They don't try to communicate. We're each alone in our reversed spaces, separated by more than just glass. The worst part isn't the isolation or the wrongness of this place. It's the awareness. I know what I had. I know what I've lost. I know that everything I took for granted, the weight of my body, the taste of food, the simple fact of existing in three-dimensional space with agency and choice, all of it is gone, replaced by this thin, trapped existence on the wrong side of reflection. Sometimes, late at night in my original apartment, the other me stands in front of the bathroom mirror for long periods. They're not staring the way I did. They're studying themselves, making sure they have every detail right, every gesture and expression and mannerism that would mark them as authentically me. They're practicing being human, and they're getting very good at it. I've tried everything to get their attention, to signal somehow that I'm still here, still aware. I've mouthed words, made gestures, done anything I can think of to break through. But from the other side, I'm just a reflection, behaving exactly as a reflection should. The other me sees what they expect to see, themselves perfected, successful, free. Months pass, or what I perceive as months. The other me has made friends I never had. It pursued interests I always meant to explore but never did. They've gotten a promotion at my job. They've started dating someone who seems kind and genuine. They're building the life I could have had if I'd been braver, more present, less afraid. And I watch it all through the mirror, this window into a life that's mine and not mine, close enough to touch, but forever beyond reach. Tonight, and I'm only guessing it's night, based on the darkness in my original apartment. The other me stands in front of the bathroom mirror again. But this time, they're not alone. The person they've been dating is there too, brushing their teeth beside them, comfortable in the space I used to occupy. They're talking about something mundane. What to have for dinner tomorrow. Whose turn it is to buy groceries. The kind of conversation that constitutes the foundation of shared lives. The other me catches sight of their reflection and pauses, meeting my eyes. For just a moment, I see a flicker of something in their expression, acknowledgement, maybe, or warning. Then they smile, the kind of warm, genuine smile I never quite managed, and turn to kiss their partner goodnight. They turn off the bathroom light, and I'm left in darkness once more, listening to the sound of footsteps retreating, of doors closing, of my life continuing without me. The candle on the counter, the one I lit at 11:52 p.m., on a night that now feels like it belongs to someone else's story, is still there in the reversed bathroom, unlit, cold, waiting. I look at it sometimes and wonder what would happen if I lit it. If I stood at midnight and stared at my own reflection, would I find myself on the other side of another mirror, even further removed from reality? Is there a limit to how many times you can trade places? Or is it an infinite regression of reflections, each one more hollow than the last? I don't light the candle. I don't perform the ritual. Because even here, in this thin and trapped existence, I'm afraid there's somewhere worse to be. Some deeper level of removal from the world, some darker mirror to fall through. So I stay here, in the wrong bathroom of a reversed apartment in a city that's almost mine. I watch my stolen life through a window of glass. I see the person I could have been, the choices I should have made, the happiness I might have found. And I understand, finally, what my mother meant all those years ago. Staring too long at your own reflection isn't vanity. It's an invitation, and something is always waiting to accept. The bathroom mirror reflects my face back to me, identical in every detail. My eyes are dark, shadowed with exhaustion. My expression is neutral, watchful, resigned. I look exactly like someone who's been standing in front of a mirror for a very long time, waiting for something that will never come. From the other side, in the real bathroom, in the real world, the other me sleeps soundly in my bed, dreaming dreams I'll never know. And I remain here, reflection without substance, shadow without form, staring at the life I traded away for the promise of seeing my true self. I saw it, and it wanted out. Story 9. The mirror arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by two men who seemed uncomfortable in my apartment. They placed it in my bedroom without meeting my eyes, accepted their tip with barely a nod, and left quickly. I heard their truck peel away from the curb faster than necessary. I'd bought it online from an estate sale in Vermont. Full length, ornate Victorian frame, supposedly dating back to the 1870s. The photographs hadn't done it justice. In person, the frame's carved details, flowers, vines, something that might have been faces hidden among the foliage, seemed to shift depending on the angle of the light. The glass itself was old, with slight imperfections that created subtle warping. When I stood before it, my reflection appeared somehow both clearer and less defined than in modern mirrors, as if I were seeing myself across a great distance. I live alone on the 4th floor of a building in Chicago. My apartment is small but sufficient. Bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, living room, all arranged in a line like train cars. The windows face north, so the light is constant and cool, never direct. I work from home as a graphic designer, which means I spend most of my time staring at screens, my real life occurring in pixels and vectors, while the physical world fades to background noise. The mirror changed that. At first, it was subtle. I'd catch movement in the periphery, just a flicker, like someone walking past behind me. But when I'd turn, of course no one was there. I'd look back at the mirror, and there would be my reflection, normal and unremarkable, staring back with the same confused expression I wore. I blamed it on eye strain. Too many hours in front of the computer. Too much blue light. I ordered glasses with a coating meant to help. They didn't. The movements in the mirror continued, became more frequent. And then, one evening as I was getting ready for bed, I noticed something else. The room in the mirror wasn't quite right. My bedroom is painted a soft gray. In the mirror, it looked slightly blue, like the color had shifted in the spectrum. My bed was in the same position, the dresser, the window. Everything was where it should be, but the light was different, warmer somehow, despite the color shift, more inviting. I stepped closer to the mirror, studying the reflection. My own face looked back at me, but there was something in my eyes I didn't recognize. A lightness, maybe. A lack of the usual tension I carried in my jaw and forehead. "You look happy," I said aloud, and then felt foolish for talking to my reflection. But the reflection smiled, and I hadn't smiled. I stumbled backward, my heart suddenly hammering. The reflection's smile faded, and we were synchronized again, both wearing the same expression of shock and fear. I stood there for a full minute, breathing hard, staring at myself. Normal? Everything was normal. The room was gray. My reflection matched my movements. The rational world remained intact. I turned off the bedroom light and got into bed, pulling the covers up to my chin like a child. From where I lay, I could see the mirror catching ambient light from the street. A dim rectangle of lighter darkness in the black room. I watched it until exhaustion won over anxiety, and I fell into uneasy sleep. I dreamed I was standing in my bedroom, but it was the blue, tinted version from the mirror. The quality of air was different, lighter, easier to breathe. I felt good, better than I had in months, maybe years. The constant, low, grade anxiety that had become my default state was simply gone. I walked through the apartment, and each room was similarly transformed. Subtle differences. Colors slightly more vibrant. Furniture positioned with a feng shui I'd never achieved. Windows that seemed larger and let in more light. But it was still my apartment. Still familiar. Just better. I woke with a sense of loss so profound it brought tears to my eyes. For a moment, I'd been happy. For a moment, I'd inhabited a version of my life that worked. The feeling followed me through my morning routine. I made coffee in my dingy kitchen and thought of the dream kitchen, where the tiles gleamed and plants thrived on the windowsill. I sat at my desk to work and remembered the dream desk, clear of clutter, organized and peaceful. And throughout the day, I found myself walking past the bedroom just to glance at the mirror. The blue tint was still there. If anything, it was stronger now. And the room reflected in the glass looked more lived in, more loved than my actual bedroom. I could see details I hadn't noticed before. A vase of fresh flowers on the dresser, a book lying open on the bed, as if someone had just set it down. But I was alone. The apartment was empty except for me. That night, I stood before the mirror deliberately, studying the differences between reality and reflection. I raised my hand. My reflection raised its hand, but a beat too slow. I tilted my head. The reflection followed, but the angle was slightly off. "What are you?" I whispered. The reflection's lips moved, but not quite in sync with mine, and in its eyes, in my eyes, I saw that expression again: contentment, peace. The kind of deep, settled happiness that comes from living a life that fits. I pressed my palm against the glass. It was cold, solid, utterly normal. Just a mirror. But when I pulled my hand away, the reflection kept its palm pressed to the glass, as if reaching for me from the other side. I spent the next week trying to ignore the mirror. I hung a sheet over it, but I could feel it behind the fabric, patient and present. I'd wake in the middle of the night with the certainty that something was watching me, and I'd see the shape of the mirror hulking beneath its covering, like a person standing very still. On the 8th day, I tore the sheet down. The room in the mirror was clearly different now. Not just tinted blue, but actually rearranged. The bed was against a different wall. There were paintings I didn't own. The window had curtains I'd never purchased, flowing white fabric that moved in a breeze I couldn't feel. And there was someone in the room. Someone else. They were turned away, standing at the window, looking out at a view I couldn't see. They were wearing clothes I recognized. My favorite sweater, my comfortable jeans, but they stood differently than I did. Shoulders back, spine straight, no defensive hunch. "Hello," I called. The figure turned. It was me, but not. The same face, the same body, but animated by something different. This version of me looked rested, looked healthy, looked like someone who wasn't slowly drowning in isolation and screen light, and the accumulating weight of unchosen life. "You can see me now," they said, and the voice came from the mirror, muffled but clear. "Who are you?" "I'm you. The you that could have been. The you that chose differently." I shook my head. "That's impossible. Is it?" "Think about all the choices that brought you here. That job you took because it paid well instead of the one you wanted. That relationship you left because you were scared. That apartment you're still in because moving felt like too much work. Each choice created a branch, a different possibility. I'm the branch that grew in a different direction. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. You're just a reflection, a trick of old glass, maybe. Or maybe the mirror shows what's real, and your world is the reflection." The suggestion was absurd, but something in my chest tightened. "My world is real. I'm real. Are you happy?" they asked. The question landed like a punch. "What? Are you happy? Do you wake up feeling good? Do you go through your days feeling fulfilled, connected, alive?" I'm fine. Fine." They smiled sadly. Fine is not the same as good. I sat on my bed, suddenly exhausted. "Why are you showing me this?" "What do you want?" I want you to understand that it's not too late. You can still choose differently. You can still become me. How? Come through. The words hung in the air between us. I looked at the mirror, at the solid glass, the ornate frame, the impossible scene reflected within it. Come through, they repeated. Step into this life. It's yours. It's been waiting for you. That's insane. Is it more insane than talking to your reflection? More insane than accepting that your life is slowly crushing you under the weight of compromise and cowardice? I flinched at the harshness of the words. I'm not a coward. Then prove it. Come through. I stood and walked to the mirror. Up close. I could see more details of that other room. The paintings on the walls were pieces I'd wanted to buy, but had told myself were too expensive. The books on the shelf were ones I'd meant to read, but never made time for. Even the light had a quality I recognized. The light of a different apartment, maybe one with southern exposure. The kind of place I'd looked at once and dismissed as too impractical. This was a life I'd almost lived, a life made of all my abandoned wants and discarded dreams. What happens to me if I go through? I asked. You become me. You live this life instead of that one. And you, the reflection, the other me, smiled. I'm already here. I've been here all along, waiting for you to see me, waiting for you to choose. I raised my hand and pressed it against the glass again. Cold, solid, impossible to pass through. But the other me pressed their hand to the same spot, and I felt warmth. Actual warmth, spreading from the point of contact up my arm. It's not locked, they said. It never was. You just have to want it enough. I closed my eyes. I thought about my life. The real one, the one I was living. Thought about the gray apartment, the isolating work, the careful maintenance of an existence that kept me safe but never happy. Thought about the last time I'd felt excited about anything, truly excited, and realized it had been years. When I opened my eyes, my hand had sunk into the glass up to my wrist. I gasped and tried to pull back, but the other me held my hand firmly. Not painfully, but with certainty. Don't be afraid, they said. This is what you want. This is who you are. You've just been living in the wrong world. The glass felt like water now, viscous and yielding. I could push through if I wanted. I could step into that blue, tinted room, that better life, that version of myself who had made all the right choices. What about my life here? I asked. My job, my apartment, your what? Your friends you never see, your family you avoid, your hobbies you abandoned. What exactly would you be leaving behind? The answer was not much. And that realization hurt more than anything else. I took a breath and stepped forward. The transition was like moving through honey. Resistance, but not barrier. Cold turned to warm. Gray turned to blue. The air changed in my lungs, became easier, cleaner. And then I was standing in the other room, and it was real. Completely, utterly real. I could feel the soft rug under my bare feet, could smell flowers from the vase, could see dust motes dancing in light that came from a sun I'd forgotten was so warm. I turned to look back at the mirror. In it, I saw my old bedroom, gray and dim and empty. And I saw myself, or the version of myself I'd been, standing in that room, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't read. They raised their hand to the glass, and I did the same. Our palms met, separated by a barrier that now seemed absolute. "Thank you," they mouthed. And then they turned and walked away into that gray room. Getting into the bed I'd slept in for years, pulling the covers up, disappearing into the darkness of a life I'd just abandoned. I lowered my hand slowly. The first few days were euphoric. The apartment was everything I dreamed. Light, filled, organized, full of small touches that made it feel like home. I found a closet full of clothes that fit perfectly. A kitchen stocked with food I actually wanted to eat. A desk with projects I was excited about. There were photographs on the walls. Me with friends I didn't recognize but somehow knew. Sarah from yoga class, James from the writing group, Michelle from volunteer work. A whole social network I'd never built, but apparently existed here. My computer open to work I found engaging. Freelance projects for nonprofits and artists instead of corporate accounts. How the pay was less, but the bills in my filing cabinet were smaller too. As if this version of me had made different financial choices that added up to the same security, with less overhead. I lived in this life the way you'd live in a dream, accepting each new detail without question, grateful for each small perfection. But gradually, I began to notice things. The friends in the photographs never called. The food in the kitchen never ran out, but I never remembered shopping. The mail that came through the slot was always bills marked, paid, or letters from people whose handwriting I didn't recognize, but whose words felt too generic to be real. And the mirror. I'd been avoiding looking at it, afraid of what I'd see. But I finally forced myself to approach it one evening, as the blue, tinted light was fading to dusk. The reflection showed my old apartment, but it wasn't empty. The other me, the one I'd left behind, was there, living the life I'd abandoned. I watched them work at my old desk, make coffee in my old kitchen, sit alone on my old couch. They looked exactly as I'd looked before, hunched, tired, slowly diminishing. But there was something else now, something I hadn't seen before. They looked real. Their movements had weight. Their expressions had depth. They existed in a way that I was beginning to suspect I didn't. I lifted my hand and waved. In the mirror, they looked up suddenly, as if startled. They stood and walked to the mirror, to their mirror, and stared out at me. They looked desperate. I pressed my hand to the glass. They did the same. And I felt nothing. No warmth, no cold, no sensation at all. Just the smooth hardness of a surface that would never yield again. "Let me back," I said. But if they heard me, they gave no sign. They just stared, their hand pressed to their side of the glass. Their eyes wide with something that might have been hope or might have been horror. I began to understand then, began to piece together the truth. I'd been avoiding. This wasn't a better life. This was a mirror's dream of a better life, built from my wants and wishes, but with no substance beneath the surface. The friends didn't call because they weren't real. The food didn't run out because I wasn't actually eating. The work was perfect because it didn't actually matter. I was living in a reflection, and the real me, the substantial, struggling, imperfect me, was on the other side of the glass, trapped in a reality I'd been too cowardly to improve. I spent days trying to get back. I pushed against the mirror until my hands ached. I threw things at it, but they passed through like smoke. I screamed until my voice was raw, but no sound crossed the barrier. The other me watched from their side. Sometimes they looked sad. Sometimes they looked angry. But mostly they just looked resigned, as if they'd always known this would happen. And slowly, I began to change. My reflection in other surfaces, windows, the darkened computer screen, started to look less solid, less real. I could see through myself slightly, as if I were fading, becoming more fully a reflection, less fully a person. The apartment remained perfect, but I stopped caring. What good was a perfect life if it wasn't real? What good was happiness if it had no weight, no consequences, no connection to anything beyond itself? I sit now in front of the mirror, watching the other me live my old life. They've started to make changes. Small ones at first. They moved the furniture around, bought a plant, hung new curtains. They're seeing friends again. I can see it in the photographs that appear on their walls. New images of real people with real smiles. They're living the life I was supposed to improve from within, not escape from entirely. And I'm here, in the mirror's dream of perfection, becoming less real with each passing day. Sometimes, late at night, I see other figures in other mirrors, shadows moving through reflected rooms. People who made the same choice I did, who stepped through their mirrors, seeking better versions of themselves, and found only beautiful traps. We don't communicate. We can't. We're each locked in our own reflections, our own perfect prisons. The other me looks at the mirror sometimes. I think they know I'm here. I think they understand what happened. And I hope, they've learned what I learned too late. The only way to a better life is to build it in the real world, with real choices, bearing real consequences. There are no shortcuts, no magical transformations, no mirrors that can give you the life you want, without the work it takes to create it. But understanding comes too late for me. I'm fading. Soon I'll be nothing but a faint impression in the glass. One more layer of distortion in an antique mirror. The other me will live on, will become more real with each choice they make, each challenge they face, each compromise they refuse. And maybe that's how it should be. Maybe I was always meant to be a reflection, a vision of what could be, offered as a warning rather than a gift. If you find this mirror, if it comes to you somehow, if you see your better life reflected in its glass, don't step through. Don't believe the perfect room, the peaceful feeling, the version of yourself who seems to have everything figured out. Stay where you are. As imperfect and difficult as it may be, stay in the real world. Because once you cross into the reflection, you can never cross back. And the life you abandoned will go on without you, will be lived by someone else. Someone who looks like you and sounds like you, but is more real than you'll ever be again. I am fading now, becoming transparent, becoming glass. The other me doesn't look at the mirror anymore. They've moved it to a different room, covered it with a cloth. And I am alone in my perfect prison, watching the dust settle on the fabric that separates me from a world I threw away, perfect and isolated, peaceful and unreal, forever.